Thank you, Mr Speaker. Question 1, please.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and good morning. With your permission, I'll answer questions 1, 9 and 22 together. This government is committed to strengthening rights for parents. This April, we are introducing bereaved partners' paternity leave and making unpaid parental leave and paternity leave day one rights, bringing over 1 million parents into scope. Next year, we'll further improve protections for pregnant women and those returning from maternity leave, and the parental leave and pay review will conclude, giving us recommendations and informing our next steps.
Okay.
Thank you. The government is making really great strides in improving parental rights at work, but for kinship carers, it's still tough. In Aylesbury, I met a wonderful lady who has become the kinship carer for her baby grandson, but she was only given 10 days of paid leave from work and now has to take unpaid leave to care for him, which is causing serious financial strain. So will the Minister join me in paying tribute to all of our kinship carers for their remarkable work? And will she outline what discussions she's having across government to ensure that kinship carers get the support they deserve?
I thank my honourable friend for her really important question and absolutely recognise the enormous contribution that kinship carers make to children's lives and of those of her constituents. This government is committed to helping more children grow up in safe, stable and loving homes within their family network, whenever it is in their children's best interest. And I want to acknowledge that incredible commitment and the generosity of kinship carers. By opening their hearts and homes to our most vulnerable children, they are absolutely transforming young lives, and we shouldn't underestimate the life-changing difference that kinship carers make every single day. Our parental leave and pay reviews, considering the needs of all working families who do not qualify for existing leave and pay entitlements, including kinship carers.
Russell.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Since 2004, the limit on relief for small employers at which they can reclaim statutory maternity pay has been set at £45,000. SMEs, of course, want to support working parents, but they need our help to do so. Could the Minister confirm whether, as part of the parental leave review, this will be looked at?
Minister.
I thank my honourable friend for her question and for her advocacy on this issue. The government acknowledges that the Class 1 National Insurance Contributions threshold used to determine eligibility for small employers' relief on statutory parental pay has remained unchanged for several years. Part of this relief includes an additional compensation payment, known as small employers' compensation, and last April the government increased the SEC rate from 3% to 8.5% and will increase it to 9% from 6 April 2026. The government keeps all eligibility criteria under review whilst balancing the needs of business and the Exchequer.
Josh Jeffrey.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Many of us on this side of the House have long been arguing for a boost to paternity leave, one of the proudest achievements of the last Labour government. But one group that are being badly let down is self-employed dads. Just 1 in 6 are taking leave after their children are born, and that's unpaid, meaning they face a drop in income of over £1,000 just for taking a couple of weeks off. Introducing paid pat leave for self-employed dads would cost £38 million at most, possibly as low as £13 million, but it'd be a huge win for dads, mums and their babies. So would the Minister consider this as part of the ongoing parental leave review?
Minister.
I thank my honourable friend for his question and for his campaigning on this issue. As I've mentioned, the government's parental leave and pay review is underway and will conclude in early 2027. We know the parental leave system needs to be improved and recognise that the current system doesn't do enough to support the many dads and partners who want to be hands-on and actively involved in caring for their children. That's why this review is so important, and will consider all current and upcoming parental leave and pay entitlements, looking at options to improve the support available to British working families and whether the support available meets the needs of working families who do not qualify for these entitlements that he outlines and raises today in the House, such as self-employed parents.
Jess Brown-Collar.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I refer members to my register of interests as the chair of the All-Party Parliamentary Group for Infant Feeding. One of the key barriers to women returning to the workplace is if they continue to breastfeed their children. A lot of workplaces are not providing facilities for expressing and then storing that breast milk. Can the Minister update the House on what the department is doing to support women back into the workplace when they are still breastfeeding their children?
Minister.
I thank the honourable member for her really important question and for raising this at the House today. We're absolutely committed to ensuring that every parent feels secure at work, particularly mums when they are breastfeeding and returning to the workplace. With the Employment Rights Act, she will know the different bits of legislation we are introducing to help women back into work, whether it's making it more unlawful to dismiss pregnant women, mothers on maternity leave, making it easier for people to take flexible working as well, and providing those provisions in the workplace. And I'll be really keen to hear more about the work that she's doing in the APG and members across this House. Thank you.
Jim Shalland.
Mr Speaker, and can I thank the Minister very much for that very positive answer. Minister, there's nobody in this House or further afield doesn't welcome the improvement of parental rights at work. I had a chance to speak to the Minister beforehand, so you know where my question is coming from, and that's on behalf of the small and medium businesses who may find it difficult to cover those who get the parental leave when it comes off work. Has anything been done to ensure that the businesses, especially the small ones, who might find time or find it difficult to find the time to put someone in place to overlook their job when they're off? Thank you so much.
Minister.
I thank the honourable member for his question and agree family-friendly workplaces strengthen our workforce and our economy and are absolutely important for reducing the turnover of staff and retaining their high-quality staff as well. And that's why it's really important that we're working with businesses small and large as our wider parental pay and leave review in every area of my work, really conscious to work really close with our businesses at the different areas, but recognise that, you know, we're in the same place of keeping people into work and especially supporting parents and making sure that workplaces are much more family-friendly.
Lord Mandelson.
Mr Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. We're supporting private sector investment in Buckingham and Bletchley by working with partners across the Oxford-Cambridge growth corridor to find new opportunities for business. And I'd like to acknowledge the work of my honourable friend in launching the Bletchley Investment Task Force, which is bringing together private capital and local partners using infrastructure such as East-West Rail to improve connectivity and working with Oxcam partners so local businesses benefit from innovation skills and inward investment.
Lord Mandelson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I thank the Minister for his response. As he says, I launched the Bletchley Investment Task Force last year to attract the businesses, investments, jobs and apprenticeships that local people need, and we're developing an investment prospectus to deliver that end. So will he meet with me and Task Force members to ensure that government is working in hand with local partners?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I'd like to congratulate him for his work with the Bletchley Investment Task Force, and I know that businesses in his constituency, such as Envisix, Carnot and Pulsar, have benefited from the work that he's done, and I'd be very happy to ensure that he gets the meeting with the relevant minister.
Frank McNally.
Question number 3, sir.
Minister.
Mr Speaker, promoting Scottish industry overseas is one of our prime objectives, whether it's opening up new markets like India for Scotch whisky or securing new beef opportunities in the United States of America, securing contracts for Scottish steel in new bridges in Ukraine or financial services around the world. We are on the case. I've even seen Tunnock's caramels in Lulu in Doha.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker, and I'm grateful to my honourable friend for that answer. With up to £8.2 billion of private investment, the Lanarkshire AI growth zone delivered by this Labour government represents one of the largest industrial investments in the history of Scotland. At its heart is a partnership between Lanarkshire's own Data Vita, an American cloud computing company, CoreWeave. Such partnerships are critical to supporting the industries of the future. So what further steps can my right honourable friend take to promote Scottish companies overseas to secure such high-quality jobs and deliver even stronger growth?
Minister.
Well, I pay tribute to my honourable friend on the work that he has done to make sure that the UK government has delivered in his constituency. And I'm glad that he raises the Lanarkshire AI growth zone, because it's a really important part of trying to make sure that the industries of the future are absolutely at the heart of the jobs of the future in Scotland. And I look forward to the SNP welcoming this in the next moments.
Here's the chance. Chris Law.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. And of course, I'll always welcome that Scotland punches above its weight, whether it be industries abroad or whether it be investment in Scotland. And indeed, under the SNP, the last 10 years have shown that foreign direct investment in Scotland has been higher outside London for the last 10 years than anywhere else in the UK, something I would expect the UK government to be also celebrating. However, instead, Mr Speaker, this week we learned through a leaked memo that Prime Minister told senior ministers of this government to go against the wishes of the Scottish Government when taking decisions. So I wanted to ask from the Secretary of State, does he agree with the Prime Minister, and does he not agree that Scotland makes the best decisions when it's the people of Scotland who makes these decisions, and that will only happen when it becomes independent?
It's like an open goal, isn't it, Mr. Speaker? Sorry, you haven't got a view. Look, I believe that we achieve far more by our common endeavour than we do by going it alone. And that's why I'm a passionate supporter of the Union. And of course, there are specific things about the Scottish economy that we want to drive forward. For instance, 54% of Scottish exports go into the European Union. If we manage to secure the SPS deal that we're trying to negotiate at the moment with the EU, that will pay enormous dividends to Scotland, which it would never secure if it was entirely on its own. Separatism never works.
Dave Robertson. Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my honourable friend, who's such an advocate champion for businesses in the Lichfield constituency, and as I'm sure he's aware, we're making sure that the UK is the best place in the world to invest by backing priority sectors through our industrial strategy. The Advanced Manufacturing Sector Plan will strengthen our UK supply chains in sectors such as automotive, aerospace and clean energy industries, ensuring that businesses in Lichfield, such as manufacturing and logistics, get the skills, technology and new commercial opportunities that they need.
Robertson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The quantum technology sector is a hugely important one for the UK. We have world-leading researchers and businesses innovating in healthcare, defence and many more industries. But quantum firms tell me that as they grow, they find it harder and harder and harder to secure the investment that they need to commercialise those exceptional ideas. The risks that we face is that they take their businesses out of the UK in order to seek that investment. That's why I've recently established an all-party parliamentary group for quantum technologies to help members in both houses understand this rapidly evolving sector. What can the government do, though, to ensure that our quantum businesses get the investment they need to grow here in the UK?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I'd like to thank my honourable friend for his work in establishing the all-party parliamentary group on quantum technologies. He's quite right to identify these technologies as very important for the future, and also to put his finger on this particular problem we have in the UK about being brilliant at innovating and investing in research, but historically struggling at scale up. And that is not something that this government is prepared to accept. And so just as we're investing in critical minerals and in automotive, connected and mobility technologies, we're also investing in this area as well. The British Business Bank is doubling its annual investments to ensure that we can support scale-up and bring at least 10 new-to-market growth stage funds so that we can leverage those pension investments and help British businesses to stay and grow in the UK.
Thank you,
Mr. Speaker. Increasing private sector investment is now being seriously held back by the failure of this government to publish its defence industrial plan. Has the Minister any idea when this much-awaited document will hit the streets?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And of course, the government recognises the importance of the defence industrial plan, and that will be brought to the House as soon as it possibly can be. But on this point of private sector investment, we saw £10 billion of investment come in from the regional summits, £79 billion of investment identified in the last quarterly report from the industrial strategy. Investors are voting with their money and they are investing in the UK.
Shadow Minister Dame Harriet Mould.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. There was a new private sector investor into Royal Mail last year, and as we heard yesterday in the House,
I'm pleased to be calling the Security Minister today, who will update the House on the work of Defending Democracy Task Force, which includes action the Government is taking in support of the Speaker's conference recommendations. Minister Dan Jarvis.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, for your statement. And with permission, I will make a statement on the work the Government is leading to defend our democracy and those who serve within it, particularly as we approach the local and devolved elections taking place in May. Now, Mr. Speaker, twice in the last decade, devoted and beloved members of this House have been lost to abhorrent acts of violence. Each time I enter this chamber, my eyes are drawn to the shields dedicated to Joe Cox and to Sir David Amess. They are not simply memorials. They are a daily reminder of the duty we owe to one another and to our democracy to ensure that no one is deterred from public service by fear, intimidation or violence. It is in that spirit that I come to the House today to set out the challenges we face, what this government is doing, and to make clear what we will not tolerate. Now, Mr. Speaker, the work of elected representatives at every level matters. It shapes millions of lives and our country's future. That is why those entrusted to serve must be able to do so without fear or favour. Free debate and honest disagreement are the lifeblood of democracy. But let me be clear, harassment, intimidation, abuse and violence are not political expression. And today, the volume, breadth and tempo of threats against elected representatives is unprecedented. Across this House, colleagues will recognise the grim reality: assaults, vandalism, stalking, blockading, a blizzard of online abuse. This is not theoretical. It affects honourable members, councillors and candidates. It affects our families and our staff. Women and ethnic minority representatives report the highest volumes of abuse, including overtly sexualised and racially charged hate, when candidates step back and when fewer people from diverse backgrounds feel able to stand. The damage is deep and lasting. That is why this government treats harassment and intimidation not as an inevitable occupational hazard, but as a serious threat to our democracy itself. Now, I know that you share that stance, Mr. Speaker, and I pay tribute to your leadership, especially through the work of the Speakers' Conference. And our response is rooted in the Defending Democracy Task Force, which I chair, working across government, law enforcement, Parliament, the Electoral Commission and the intelligence community. The mandate of the task force, renewed by this Prime Minister, is clear: to tackle the full spectrum of threats to our democracy. That means preventing and deterring harassment, ensuring real consequences when it does occur, and providing proportionate, effective security for everyone who participates in our democratic process. This is a year-round task, but the upcoming local elections demand that we intensify our focus and, where necessary, go further. Now, yesterday, I chaired a meeting of the Defending Democracy Task Force with ministers from the devolved nations. It was a constructive discussion on strengthening our collective security posture ahead of May. We reaffirmed our readiness to support colleagues in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. The police are at the forefront of defending democracy efforts, and I thank officers and staff across the country for their dedication and diligence. Ahead of the May elections, we are working with the College of Policing, the National Police Chiefs Council, to strengthen guidance for frontline officers responding to incidents involving elected representatives. It is essential that the consistency of police response is improved across all force areas, and I welcome the police's decision to act on the recommendations of your conference, Mr. Speaker. Now, I'm pleased to be able to inform the House today that the Deputy Chief Constable Chris Barmer from Cambridgeshire Police has been appointed to the role as the National Police Chiefs Council lead for defending democracy. And I've written to the Chair of the National Police Chiefs Council and to DCC Barmer to stress the importance of their work to democracy itself. I emphasise the importance of keeping pace with the evolving threat abuse poses to democracy, and I will be meeting with them both shortly. Every police force now has a dedicated superintendent coordinator for Operation Bridger, which handles the protection of members beyond the parliamentary estate. Through Operation Ford, elected official advisers at working level exist to support both members of Parliament and locally elected representatives. I have extended the Operation Ford offer and those who serve within it, particularly as we approach the local and devolved elections taking place in May. Now, Mr. Speaker, twice in the last decade, devoted and beloved members of this House have been lost to abhorrent acts of violence. Each time I enter this chamber, my eyes are drawn to the shields dedicated to Joe Cox and to Sir David Amis. They are not simply memorials.
But it's best. Katie Lamb, Shadow Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There is much to welcome in the Security Minister's statement today. I thank him for advance sight of it and more broadly for his update on the work of the Defending Democracy Task Force. And I join him in remembering our colleagues who lost their lives in service of the public. As he rightly notes, all of us in this place have a sacred duty to protect and uphold the democracy which has made this country so great for so long. I know few understand this as well as those in the Speaker's office, Mr. Speaker, and all of our Madam Deputy Speakers. So let me take this opportunity to thank you on behalf of all members here for everything you do in public and in private to keep us all safe. Targeted and serious intimidation of democratically elected politicians, particularly where that intimidation escalates into credible physical threats, is a serious impediment to the functioning of our democracy. It is, of course, right that criminal behaviour is prosecuted and punished. At the same time, we have a duty to ensure that policing of genuinely criminal behaviour does not stray into policing of free speech or free expression. In individual cases, this can be a challenging balance to strike. I trust the Minister will approach these cases with the appropriate caution and sensitivity. While many aspects of the Minister's statement are encouraging, I am concerned that other members of this government have failed to approach this issue with the necessary caution or the necessary candour. We must be honest about the fact that, while violence against elected politicians can come from a wide variety of groups, the single biggest extremist threat to our country remains the threat of extremist Islamist violence. That threat is intimately tied up with a growing tendency towards sectarian politics in some parts of our country. As my right honourable friend, the Leader of the Opposition, said recently, separatism is on the rise in our country because, for too long, Britain has been complacent about our culture and too tolerant of those weaponising identity politics for their own gain. Yet, in its cohesion strategy published earlier this week, this government seemed unwilling to deal with this threat head-on. The strategy openly acknowledged the existence of communities in the UK living segregated or parallel lives. But rather than dealing with that problem directly, the government proposes a package which may only make this problem worse. More DEI in the public sector, an attempt to smuggle in so-called social engineering under the guise of social cohesion, advisory boards designed to manage tensions when it was exactly this focus on managing community tensions which allowed rape and grooming gangs to operate unchecked for so long in towns and cities across our country, and a new rebranded Islamophobia definition to be issued as guidance to public servants, which will have a chilling effect on their behaviour. This will make it harder to have open public discussions about subjects like female genital mutilation, grooming and rape gangs, and extremism, including any threats it may pose to our democracy. We have already seen that creating conditions in which people fear being branded as racist for keeping the public safe can create horrific outcomes. We must never again allow guidance like this to create a culture of fear which breeds inaction, cover-up or denial. The cohesion strategy is a recipe for further suppression of discussion of the threats that face us today and their root causes. We will not make the truth disappear by discouraging people from talking about it. That has never worked, and it will not work now. So again, I thank the Minister for his statement today and his work on tackling criminality towards elected officials. Can he assure us that his colleagues in government are as committed to dealing with this problem at its root as he himself seems to be?
Minister Jarvis.
Madam Deputy Speaker, let me firstly join with the Shadow Minister in expressing our, I'm sure, collective thanks to Mr Speaker, to all of the Deputy Speakers and all of the staff in this House for the important work that they do. It's hugely appreciated, and I know that we are very grateful to it. Let me try and find a point of consensus, difficult though that may be to do given what we've heard. I'd very much wanted to take the opportunity today to do this on a very much a cross-party basis. And in fact, I'd intended and will continue to take the opportunity to thank the work that was done by the previous government. In particular, I want to take the opportunity to pay tribute to my predecessor, the Right Honourable Member for Tonbridge, who set up the Defending Democracy Task Force. It didn't exist before he was the Security Minister. He set it up. It is a very strong legacy for him because he invested a lot in it, and I hope that he will see how seriously we take that work. He passed the baton on to me, and I hope that he will see that, having taken the baton gratefully from him, we have sprinted forward with it. I was particularly pleased this week to chair a meeting of the Defending Democracy Task Force that brought the whole of the system together. That was always his intention, that it would provide that fulcrum point to bring together the different constituent parts of government and law enforcement and the Electoral Commission to provide, if you like, a single version of the truth and make sure that we are properly resourcing all of those who work to keep us safe. I think and I hope that he'll be proud of the work that the task force is doing. He understands it's not just about periods of electoral activity. This is activity that takes place the whole year round. He knows how seriously I take it, and I was really grateful the other day to be reminded of the work that he'd done in terms of getting us to where we are now. And I hope that he will be pleased to acknowledge the progress that we've made in recent times, which I referenced in my introductory remarks. Not least, the government has introduced new legislation. It's important to bring forward legislation where it's required, which will restrict the protest outside the homes of public office holders. I don't think anyone really thinks that it is appropriate that MPs and their families should be targeted at home, and we are taking legislative action to prevent that from happening. The relationship, as the Right Honourable Gentleman will know, with the police is a very important one, and we work very closely with them to ensure that they've got the appropriate guidance that they need, particularly for police officers on the front line when responding to incidents involving elected representatives. And I'm particularly pleased to be joined on the front bench by the Minister for Democracy. She has other responsibilities, but that's a very important part of her remit. I'm really grateful to her for the important work that she has been doing in terms of the representation of the People Bill, which will introduce new measures to create a very powerful deterrent for those who would seek to intimidate those who serve in our democracy. Now, the Shadow Minister opposite, she did raise a point about policing priorities, and I understand why she would seek to raise that particular point. She will understand, not least from her time previously working in the Home Office, that the police are operationally independent, but it is important that we work closely with the police. That's why I particularly took the opportunity this morning to welcome the appointment of a new national lead for defending democracy. This is someone that I intend to work very closely with, and I think will provide an important focus for policing activity around the country. Now, Madam Deputy Speaker, I am very sorry that the Honourable Lady opposite then chose to segue into matters that were not within the scope of this statement. I'm genuinely so sorry that she decided to do so, because, not least, I'd given the front bench opposite ample warning of my intention to come forward and bring a statement to this House today. I did so on the clear understanding that this is something around which we can unite as a House, that on this, of all occasions, as we stand and sit in the shadow of the shields, if we can't cooperate on this, then what can we cooperate? So I hope the Honourable Lady will reflect on her comments.
Dawn Butler.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Madam Deputy Speaker, I hope the Shadow Minister will get to her feet and correct the record, because there's a far greater threat from the far right than there is from Islam. And, you know, in this holy month of Ramadan, I'm sure Muslims all over the country will be praying for her soul, whether she deserves it or not. Madam Deputy Speaker, I sit on the Speaker's Commission on AI, which is chaired quite expertly by yourself. And every month I put a block of the month on my social media. The threats to our safety is getting worse. A small number of tech firms are deciding what a large number of people see here on their social media platforms with very little oversight or accountability. 8 people basically deciding what 8 billion people see. It is time, and I hope the Minister would agree with me, it's time. We can't put guardrails around the AI industry. It's moving too quickly. quickly. So we need to put guardrails around the human beings. We need to make sure that our rights are protected, our voice, our image, and what we do is protected. So we need to focus on guardrails around the human. And I do hope that the Minister will consider my human rights bill that I am proposing very shortly.
Minister Jarvis.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm very grateful to my honourable friend, not least for the work that she does on the Speaker's Commission. And she's right to raise the concerns in the way that she has. I know that she will understand that there's a very important role for DCIT in terms of these matters. These are things that we discuss in the forum of the Defending Democracy Task Force on a very regular basis. But she's right to raise her concerns, and I know that they will be widely shared around this House. But perhaps I might just say one other thing to my honourable friend, because I am in awe of the courage that she and other honourable members brings to their public service in the face of extremely unpleasant abuse that she and other honourable members have to tolerate on a very regular basis, that she continues to step forward to represent her constituents and her country in the way that she does is greatly to her credit.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson Max Wilkinson.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and thank you to the Speaker's office for all that the Speaker and the Madam Deputy Speakers are doing on this issue. I must say I was somewhat taken aback by the Shadow Minister's approach to this, and I'll try to be constructive, but where I do veer away, I hope the Minister will take the points. The Minister is right to highlight the importance of protecting politicians at every level of our democracy. We must ensure that the horror of what happened to Joe Cox and Sir David Amess never happens again, and that representatives at every level feel secure when they're discharging their democratic duties. Many members have received death threats and harassment and feared for their families, particularly women and those from minority backgrounds. Having experienced threats myself, not from radical Islamists but from right-wing extremists, I know how important these protections are. I also remember, as the Cheltenham MP, the bravery of Andrew Pennington, who died defending my late friend Nigel Jones in an attack on the Cheltenham Liberal Democrat office. I welcome the steps that the Minister is taking to ensure that the elections in May are free and fair. Our democracy is precious, and it must be carefully protected by those in power. To that end, we welcome the existence of the task force and the work that it is doing. We do worry, however, that the task force is perhaps not working fast enough to address the threat of foreign interference in our democracy. Hostile states are increasingly using social and traditional media to spread disinformation, to undermine democracy and our elections. So what steps are ministers taking to tackle that threat? As the Member of Parliament for Cheltenham, home to GCHQ, I know the vital work our intelligence agencies do to counter those threats, but that must be matched by political leadership from this House as well. We will all remember, Madam Deputy Speaker, with disgust, the case of Nathan Gill, the Reform politician convicted of working for the Russian government, which received remarkably little attention. Yet it shows the very real threat to our democracy from within. We are all scarred also by the revelations that there were agents of the Chinese Communist Party working in this House for honourable members, and we were outraged, rightly, that Peter Mandelson shared market-sensitive information with Epstein, among many elements of disgraceful conduct that poses a threat to our democracy. So is it not now time for a dedicated crime and corruption unit in Whitehall? And would the Minister agree with me that it is time for legislation to ensure all electoral candidates declare any donations or gifts from Russia? Does he also agree with me that it's time that rules are introduced around donations made to political parties via cryptocurrencies? This method obscures the source of donations, and this loophole must be closed before it is exploited more widely to the detriment of our democracy. We will all have noted the recent endorsement of crypto by the leader of the Reform Party, the member for Clacton, who does so, Madam Deputy Speaker, while maintaining, and I quote, that he does not do computers. There is much work to be done to protect our democracy, and the Minister and the Government has our support to speed that up, because there is nothing more important than we can do in this House than protect those values.
Minister Jarvis.
Well, Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm very grateful to him for the constructive nature of his tone this morning. I'm also very concerned to hear about the threats that he has faced, and he knows that I'll be very keen to work closely with him if there's any further support that he thinks that is required. And I also join with him in remembering his lost colleague. He's right to raise the important work that his constituents do in his constituency of Cheltenham, and he knows that I'm a huge supporter and a fairly regular visitor to meet with them, and he's right to raise concerns about foreign interference. he will know, and I'm pretty certain that his party have provided a submission to the Rycroft review, that the government commissioned Philip Rycroft to do an independent piece of work to look at the nature of interference in our democracy. I know that Mr Rycroft is finishing his work and will report to ministers in the near future, and will do so in a way that will allow MHCLG to incorporate any of the recommendations that they think is appropriate into forthcoming legislation. He cited a number of particularly egregious examples of interference in our democracy, and he made a number of what I think are entirely reasonable and helpful suggestions. I hope he knows that my door, and I'm sure the door of my fellow minister, is always open to him should he wish to discuss these matters further.
Rachel Hopkins.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I should mention that I'm a member of the Speaker's Committee on the Electoral Commission, where we work very collegiately, cross-party, in support of that important work. I thank the Minister for his statement today, and like the women who encouraged me, I aim to support any young women, particularly those from Black and Asian minority backgrounds in my constituency, to put themselves forward to represent their communities in local government. But unfortunately, the increased harassment, abuse and intimidation of councillors and candidates we've seen, particularly in recent years, has been a huge deterrent. So does the Minister agree with me that it's vital we increase the support and protection to all those putting themselves forward, but particularly women, to encourage women from all backgrounds to step forward and represent their communities?
Well, I'm very grateful, Madam Deputy Speaker, to my honourable friend for the important work that she does on the Electoral Commission panel and for the points that she has raised. She's absolutely right about the threat that women elected representatives and candidates face around the country. I hope that she sees the determination of the government to work with her and colleagues across this House to make sure that we're putting the protections and the support in place that are required. That was specifically why I referenced the creation of the new threat assessment, which will provide a greater granularity around operational intelligence that we think will deliver real benefits at a local level. She's absolutely right to highlight the concern about the threats, intimidation and harassment, both online and in person, of those participating in public life, and there are some particularly egregious examples of that in recent times. We've got to do everything that we possibly can to support those women who want to step forward, and I'm particularly concerned of the chilling effect that some of these threats and intimidation have on extremely talented women who might want to step forward in public life, but will look at the circumstances that they might have to deal with and think, well, why would I want to expose myself to that? We should all collectively be very concerned about that, and collectively we should redouble our efforts to stand against it. And that is precisely why I made the point, hopefully as clearly as I did, that wherever we encounter this kind of activity, we must report it.
My neighbour, Tom Tugendhat.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. May I start by thanking my honourable friend for his kind words at the beginning, and may I also extend praise to Lord Case, who as Cabinet Secretary was so important in setting this up. He's absolutely right to, of course, have mentioned Jo Cox and Sir David Amess, both of whom at various different points were in my mind when this was set up, and I am indeed extremely impressed with what he's done in taking forward the Defending Democracy Task Force. May I perhaps unfairly challenge him, however, to go a little further and to answer some of the questions that I didn't answer when I was in his place, but I hope that he may be able to answer now that things have progressed a bit. And that's really to do with foreign influence. When we're looking today at what China has done in our democracy, and I don't just mean in this House, but I mean online, when we're seeing the threats that organisations like TikTok bring in terms of disinformation and the way in which they actively promote or demote stories that promote division, we can see that the nature of the threat has changed. And this is really a question about influence. Now, yesterday I had the good fortune of meeting the Director General of Taiwan's Ministry of Justice Intelligence Bureau, who is, he knows, I was the first Cabinet Minister to meet a Cabinet Minister from Taiwan in a non-trade capacity. They have a lot to teach us about the way in which China plays in our democracy and tries to influence it. Has he looked or has he considered any of that yet? And the second area I would be interested in his thoughts. Again, an area that I didn't get to, I would have liked to have got to, but I didn't get to when I was in his position, which is on the protection of journalists. Because while it is, of course, important to protect the freedom of elected members at whatever organisation, whether council or national, in which they speak, it is also important to protect journalists in their freedom to speak. Now, I was made aware only recently of a very unpleasant threat against Konstantin Kisin, relating the attack on Charlie Kirk, who was murdered only a few months ago. Now, this happened to come from a left-wing extremist, but as we know, there are extremists of various different colour and creed in our community, various different political opinion. So has he looked at how protecting journalists may be able to be brought into the Defending Democracy Task Force?
Mr Jarvis.
Well, Madam Deputy Speaker, let me extend my thanks to him again for the work that he did, and he's right to raise the important contribution that was made by the then Cabinet Secretary, now Lord Case, in terms of setting the Defending Democracy Task Force up in the first place. I genuinely welcome the points that he has made. He's been very good about providing helpful bits of information and intelligence over the past 18 months or so, and I always really appreciate that because it's well meant and well received. I understand why he raises the particular concerns about China, which have been very well debated across this House. I believe that he does understand how seriously I take those threats. There is a huge amount of activity taking place across government. For reasons that he will know very well, we don't often get into the detail of all of that. But I hope that he will understand that that activity is underway. And a crucial part of that is, as he described, working with our allies. And we do that on a very, very regular basis. He's right to raise the important role that journalists play. He will remember from his time in the Home Office and working with colleagues across government that a lot of resource and a lot of time is invested in our protective security regime. We don't tend to say much about it, but I give him an assurance of the seriousness with which we take these issues, and I agree with him about the importance of free speech and the role that journalists have to play. It's completely unacceptable that anyone in this country should be intimidated by any foreign power, and this government will always stand against that activity.
Lola McAvoy.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I'd like to put on record my personal thanks to the Minister for the support that he's given many members of this House, including myself, as newly elected members, and welcome a newly elected female member to the House today. Would the Minister elaborate a little bit on the Defending Democracy Task Force and any focus or any time that was spent looking into the algorithms that reward rage baiting and extremist opinions? Because I feel that it is degrading our public debate outside this place and inside it.
Minister.
Well, I'm very grateful to her. She's a great constituency MP, and it's profoundly concerning to me, and I'm sure to other members who've been in this place for a number of years now, to hear about some of the threats, the harassment, the intimidation that newer members have had to face in recent time. It's completely unacceptable, and I pay tribute to their resilience in terms of standing against it, but we want to work very closely with them to make sure that they feel properly supported in that. She's right to raise concerns about algorithms. I can give her an assurance that that is a subject that has been discussed on a number of occasions within the Defending Democracy Task Force. I know that she will understand that DCIT are the lead department for that activity. But I heard someone make the comparison the other day that in days gone by, people would go into a library and they would choose the book that they want to read. Now online, often people's content is being directed by forces way beyond their control. I think we should all be very concerned about that. Certainly I am, and it's a matter that I work very closely with colleagues in DCIT on.
Greg Smith.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I welcome the Minister's statement this afternoon and entirely concur with the domestic elements of protecting our democracy he announced. But if I can return to the issue of foreign influence, of course, those countries that seek our democracy harm do not recognise the value of democracy themselves. My right honourable friend has mentioned China. We have debated at length in this House Russia, and the Minister was in his place yesterday when I questioned the Home Secretary on the influence of Iran in this country, with a lot of fears and reporting of shell companies being used, proxies being used to operate within our own shores, including the IRGC themselves. Given the heightened tensions in the Middle East at the moment focused around that Iranian regime, can I ask the Minister to ensure that all loopholes are being closed down to stop the influence of that Iranian regime, where no matter what different views are on the war, I think the whole House can condemn the Iranian regime itself to ensure they are not able to influence our democracy?
Mr Jarvis.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I think the Honourable Member makes some really good and important points. And it also provides me with an opportunity to pay tribute to the extraordinary work conducted by our intelligence services and by counter-terrorism police. By very nature of the work that they do, it's almost always in the shadows, and often they don't get the praise that I think that they deserve. There are some extraordinary people, quite literally working around the clock to keep our country safe, and we owe them a debt of gratitude. He's right to raise concerns about the current situation in the Middle East, and he's right to ask questions about what the government's response is to it. I know that there is often a temptation to reach for the prescription tool, and sometimes that is the right response. We talk a lot in government about toolkits. There is quite a lot in our toolkit, and I give him and the House an assurance that I will use everything that is in the toolkit to stand against the threats that we face.
Luke Meyer.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. We've heard today from members across the House about two twin evils that are driving online abuse. One being the algorithms of social media giants which are promoting content which makes people feel angry and makes people feel afraid, and the other is the influence of hostile states who deliberately sow disinformation designed to undermine our democracies. I've heard the Minister say that this is DSIT's role primarily to deal with, but please will he ensure that ministers keep all of us updated on the work that is going on to address this, because unless we all work together across parties and across departments, then this issue will continue to proliferate and there will not be a democracy for us to defend.
Mr Jarvis.
Well, Madam Deputy Speaker, my honourable friend is absolutely right to raise the point in the way that he does. And whilst, of course, there is an important role for DSIT, I can give him an assurance that lots of other government departments are actively involved in that work as well, including the Foreign Office, the Home Office, the Cabinet Office and other government departments. He's right to raise concerns, but I give him an assurance that we're doing everything that we possibly can to stand against those particular threats.
Ben Maguire.
Can I just thank the Minister for his statement? And it stood in very stark contrast to the statement from the opposition, which was chilling. I thank the Minister for the statement. Many members have already referenced the horrific online abuse which we see on a daily basis. And that online abuse often originates, as has been said already, from foreign states. What steps is the Minister and the task force taking to protect our democracy from foreign interference, which is often subversive, especially following the recent arrests on allegations of spying for China?
Mr Jarvis.
Well, I'm grateful to him for the approach that he's taken. I can give him an assurance that through the Defending Democracy Task Force and working with the intelligence services and with counter-terrorism police and law enforcement more generally, we're doing everything that we possibly can to stand against the nature of the threats that he described. The world is a dangerous, challenging place at the moment, and there are a range of different state actors who will take every opportunity to sow mis- and disinformation and undermine the basis of our democracy. That is a very important role for government to stand against all of that. But I also think there's a really important role for this House, and that is why I've approached this statement in the way that I have. I want to work with members right across the political divide, and I'm grateful to him for the support of that approach.
Chris Webb.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I first just put on the record my sincere thanks to the Minister for reaching out after the incident that occurred in Blackpool with me a few weeks ago. Unfortunately, since becoming a member of this House, I've received a barrage of constant threats and death threats from the far right in my constituency, and that seems to be growing, which is a real concern. So I know from my discussions with the Minister how seriously he takes the security of members of this House and also those councillors that serve in our town halls. So can he outline to the House how we can support him in defending our democracy in the right way, which unfortunately is in stark contrast to what we heard from the party opposite in their statement today?
Mr Jarvis.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm very grateful to him. He knows I was very concerned to hear about the incident that happened recently. I can say to him and to the House that under those very difficult circumstances, he did exactly the right thing. But he was dealing with a situation that he should not have had to deal with. And that's why it's incredibly important that we make sure that our response is as organised and resourced as it needs to be. He specifically asked the question about what we can collectively do, what more can we do together as parliamentarians. My response to that is to echo the remarks that I made earlier, which is to report it. I know that we're all busy people, our staff are busy, but we mustn't let anything slide. We must take every opportunity, even if it falls below a legal threshold, to report matters to the police. We can use.
Councillor Blackburn.
It was an honour to serve on the Speakers' Conference, and I've tried to, in all of the work that I've done around security, be a voice for the smaller parties, and particularly for people that are further away from Parliament as well. One of the biggest strengths of the Speakers' Conference was the amount of listening it did to members and members' experiences. I appreciate the huge amount of work that's been done to improve the data gathering and the fact that we're much better at pulling together understanding on threats. But would the Minister give us a reassurance that members' experiences will be listened to in addition to just looking at the data, so that we can build on those strengths that we had during the Speakers' Conference?
Let me just quickly say that I had a very constructive meeting with colleagues from the Scottish Government yesterday, and I appreciate their attendance at the meeting. She's absolutely right to raise concerns about experiences, and that is why I will always make myself available to speak to any member of this House about what's happened to them.
Speaker, much of the intimidation candidates now face doesn't come on the doorstep, but from anonymous or fake online accounts. Having experienced that myself, I welcome the work of this government, the police, the Defending Democracy Task Force and the Office of Mr and Madam Deputy Speakers. I'd like to ask the Minister what action is being taken to stop online anonymity being used as a shield for harassment and intimidation in our democracy, and how will candidates in Portsmouth's May election receive advice, support, protection and the enforcement they need to stand safely for public office?
Right to raise the concerns in the way that she has. Hopefully she will have heard my earlier remarks, which specifically respond to the point that she's made. We're working very closely with law enforcement, and there is work underway to work more closely with the tech companies as well, to make sure that we've got all of the right protections in place for the elections. But if there's more she thinks that we should be doing, I'd be very grateful to discuss it with her.
Madam Llefarydd, and I welcome the statement from the Minister and everybody's commitment in the House to keep us all as safe as possible. The Secretary of State just a few months ago called the case of Russian interference within Reform Party a stain on our democracy. And since then, of course, we've had members linked to Welsh Labour Party are being investigated for their connections with the Chinese state. With the Senedd Cymru election just a mere 2 months away, what assurances can the Minister give me that this task force will help defend our elections in Wales from foreign influence and interference?
And give her the assurance that she seeks, and I'm grateful to Welsh colleagues for their attendance at the Defending Democracy Task Force yesterday. She's right to raise the threats and the challenges that we face. We are making sure that our response to them is proportionate.
Richard Baker.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm pleased to hear about the Minister's positive dialogue with Scottish ministers ahead of the vital elections in May. On the issue of the collective responsibility of political parties to fair and to safe debate, will you agree there should be no repeat of the racist advert published by Reform last year attacking Anas Sarwar for the heritage of his family, which was widely published and seen hundreds of thousands of times on social media?
Well, I do agree with him, and I can tell him that myself, or the Director General of MI5 and myself, met with the Chief Executives of political parties just recently to discuss these matters.
Madam Deputy Speaker, in 2019 I was physically attacked, or at least an attempt was made to physically attack me during the 2019 general election when a beer glass was thrown at my head. I recognise how intimidating that was, but that was nothing to the experience of those who are commemorated on the walls of this House, or indeed many of the women who sit in this chamber. Less than 12 hours ago, I'm very sorry to say, the Conservative Party put out social media posts that placed the Prime Minister's face on the body of a slug, shameful, or a worm, shameful, or a snake on a £5 note. And several months ago, the Conservative Party in my area of Surrey Heath put out a tweet about me that suggested that I somehow supported rape gangs because I couldn't support their reasoned amendment to the Children's Wellbeing and Schools Bill. Does the Security Minister consider those social media acts to be elevating our politics? and conforming to the values that we're speaking about today.
Well, I'm grateful to him, but concerned to hear about what happened to him back in 2019. I think he makes an important and reasonable case. I think the majority of members in this House will agree with him, and it's something that we need to keep a very close eye on.
Samantha Niblett. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I welcome this statement, and I'm particularly delighted to read where the law fails to provide adequate protection, we will strengthen it. As someone who had a case thrown out by the CPS for being an MP, I should just have thicker skin. That is welcome news. I have thick skin. But does he share my concerns that we have members of this House who are benefiting from engagement with platforms such as X and taking a significant income and then benefiting from essentially angry engagement, and it's going directly to their pockets?
Well, Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm very sorry to hear about what happened to the Honourable Lady. She's right to reference the work that we're doing. We are changing the law to strengthen it in order to provide additional protections for members and for elected representatives. I think she makes a good point and a good challenge, and I know it will have been heard and agreed with around the House.
Final question, Jim Shannon.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I thank the Minister very much for his statement and thank the Speakers' Conference as well for bringing this forward. It's really important to do so. Minister, the Operation Forward that he referred to on page 2 says that it will cover England, Scotland, Wales. Can I just ask clarification why Northern Ireland? Or maybe there's something else in place, but just to check. Can I also make a comment? Often members and indeed their staff and teams are required during election campaigns to undertake extensive public-facing activities, including constituency events, door-to-door canvassing and campaigning, which can expose them to additional harassment or intimidation. What assessment has been made on the adequacy of security arrangements and guidance to members and their staff during election periods, and what role the task force is playing in coordinating measures to mitigate these risks? Thanks so much.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm grateful to him, as I always am, and also grateful to the First Minister and the Deputy First Minister from the Northern Ireland Assembly for their attendance at the task force yesterday. The devolved arrangements are slightly different in Northern Ireland with regard to Operation Forward, but I gave an assurance to the meeting yesterday that where there are areas where we can provide additional support to Northern Ireland, then of course we'd be happy to do so.
That is the end of the statement on Defending Democracy Task Force. I'll give the front benches a moment or two to shuffle as we start the business of the day. Are ready. We now come to the general debate on International Women's Day, and I call the Minister to move. Minister Seema Kennedy.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I beg to move that this House has considered the matter of International Women's Day 2026. It is an honour to open this International Women's Day debate, held for the first time since 2020 in government time. International Women's Day was forged in the labour strikes of the early 20th century as women came together to call for better pay, shorter working hours and voting rights. It has become an important milestone which celebrates the achievement of women, promotes gender equality and acts as a call to action. In this debate, I've no doubt we will hear about pioneering pathfinders, including women who smashed the glass ceiling in Parliament too and paved the way for us today. Constance Markovich, the first woman elected. Nancy Astor, the first to take her seat. Margaret Bonfield, the first woman cabinet minister, and I recommend the new biography by Nan Sloan, a driving force also behind the Labour Women's Network. Honourable members will mention, I'm sure, the first woman Prime Minister in 1979. Labour has seen the first female Chief Whip, the first female Chancellor, the first black woman MP, the inspirational Right Honourable Member for Hackney North and Stoke Newington. We've also seen Barbara Castle, Ellen Wilkinson, Jenny Lee and, of course, Baroness Harman in the other place. And not to forget yourself, Madam Deputy Speaker, the first non-white Deputy Speaker and the first female Muslim Minister. I also have many greats and firsts sitting behind me and probably in front of me, Madam Deputy Speaker, including
the Honourable Member for Brent East, the first female black minister and the first black woman to speak from this dispatch box. And I'm also proud that many are also Fabian women, and proud that this year we mark 21 years of the Fabian Women's Network. I will give way.
Talking of strong women, Madam Deputy Speaker, my mum, my wife, my 3 daughters-in-law and my 3 grandchildren, 3 wee girls at a very young age, but I'll tell you what, they have the potential to be leaders as well. And they're fierce women, they're strong, and I'm very, very pleased to see that. But does the Minister please, ever mindful on the day we're celebrating Women's Day across Northern Ireland, and the Minister will know this, another lady was killed last week. And that shows the highest number of women have been murdered in Northern Ireland, the whole of the United Kingdom. Does she share my concern where we celebrate women, we also have to protect women, and our society must do that? Thank you so much.
I thank the honourable gentleman for his comments, and indeed I wish all the women in his family a very happy International Women's Day, and every girl is a leader. Let that message ring out from this House. And he is absolutely right that we also must look at where women come under threats through whether that's online or through violence, and we must make sure we do everything to protect women and girls across the UK and across the world. Madam Deputy Speaker, we speak today about the agenda of women's progress. But we must remind ourselves that whilst we have made progress, men and women are still not equal at home and not equal abroad. And indeed, that we face a new challenge, a misogynistic insurgency that is determined to roll back women's rights. And when we look at the level of online abuse, sexual harassment and intimidation, it is horrifying to see us in a situation with products that appear designed to make money out of the sexual harassment of women. So today I want to make 3 main arguments: that women are still not equal, that we must be uncompromising in resisting the backlash on women's rights, and that in these fragmented times, women must work with women around the world. Madam Deputy Speaker, in a world where inequality persists in society, in the economy and in power, I am proud that Labour, led by a cabinet that is 46% women, is putting progress of women at the heart of its missions. That isn't a coincidence. Women's representation in politics drives new conversation and puts wider issues on the agenda. Of the 695 women ever elected to the House of Commons, 405, or 58%, were first elected as Labour MPs, and 182, or 26%, as Conservative MPs.
Thank the honourable member for giving way. I'm proud to have joined this Parliament in 2024 as part of a record number of women elected for Plaid Cymru, and of the record 40% of women being elected in that same year. We're clearly on our way for gender equal Parliament. So with this historic milestone within sight, would the Minister commit to Government to centenary actions call to enact Section 106 of the Equality Act, which would require political parties to publish diversity data on candidates to increase transparency?
I thank the honourable lady for her question, and indeed that I think comments about our 40% of women in the House of Commons today is an important milestone, but we know we're not yet at 50%, and I'm proud that the Labour Party has got close to that, and in fact pretty much reached that level. And it is important that we continue to look to the centenary, as she describes, and look at a range of measures that we can see to make sure that we push forward the progress of women's representation and the role of political parties in that, but also that we look forward to the progress of women in every part of society and every part of our economy. I do want to also recognise, Madam Deputy Speaker, about the choices we make, because Labour's manifesto committed to action to tackle gender inequality, from strengthening rights for women in work and reducing the gender pay gap to halving violence against women and girls. Our groundbreaking Violence Against Women and Girls strategy begins a decade-long whole-of-government, whole-of-society effort to halve violence against women and girls, and is backed by over £1 billion worth of funding. That is a goal I know that every member of this House will be wanting to get behind. I also want to acknowledge the incredible efforts of my friend and colleague, the Minister for Safeguarding, who I am proud to stand alongside in today's debate. And exactly, more. And we're not just acting at home. We have made tackling violence against women and girls a priority in our foreign policy too. Recently, the Foreign Secretary launched All In, a new international coalition to scale up action to end violence against women and girls. It brings together global leaders, experts and campaigners and focuses on preventing violence before it happens. Labour is working to prioritise women's health, with a refreshed women's health strategy to be published soon. Our plans to make work pay are putting in stronger protections for pregnant women and new mothers at work and tackling maternity inequality. We're reviewing parental leave and making flexible working more easily available. And with 2 consecutive years of minimum wage rises, putting more money in the pockets of working women.
Will the Honourable Lady give way on that point?
I will give way very briefly.
I thank the Honourable Lady for giving way, and she's giving a brilliant speech that lots of us will be feeling very emotional about. Would the Honourable Lady agree with me and members across the House that whilst increasing the minimum wage is really important and disproportionately does affect female workers, we need to restructure how we value women's work as well and the workforce that is predominantly made up from women?
I thank my honourable friend for her comments, and indeed that is a debate that continues to be ongoing, and indeed will be relevant issues to that I will touch on in my remarks. Madam Deputy Speaker, last week I was also proud to launch our voluntary action plans alongside the Secretary of State for Women and Equalities. Employers with over 250 employees will be asked to submit action plans as part of the Employment Rights Act, showing how they will reduce their gender pay gaps and support employees going through the menopause. We are working with business leaders, civil society and trade unions because we cannot reach workplace equality without the support and the commitment of all. And removing the 2-child limit will also lift 450,000 children out of relative poverty in the final year of this Parliament. A poverty we know impacts women, who the Women's Budgets Group describe as the shock absorbers of poverty. On business, Madam Deputy Speaker, the Chancellor has backed the Invest in Women's Task Force, launching a funding pool of over £600 million to be invested in women-led businesses, including £130 million from the British Business Bank. That is the largest fund of its kind globally, addressing the enormous access to finance barriers that exist for women. And alongside, this government is supporting more women in the UK's tech sector. Every year, the economy loses an estimated £2 to £3.5 billion because women leave the tech sector or change sector due to barriers that should not exist. Men outnumber women 4 to 1 in computer science degrees, a subject I also studied, Madam Deputy Speaker. Women are less likely to enter tech, stay in the sector or rise to leadership. I will give way very briefly.
I wonder if she would be able to talk about not just the tech sector, but in my constituency there's a huge number of engineering jobs, and there's such a glass ceiling when it comes to engineering that women rarely manage to make it above. It's a similar issue with race equality when it comes to the higher tiers of engineering.
Madam Deputy Speaker, never a truer word was spoken. What I will say, Madam Deputy Speaker, is that building on the Honourable Lady's comment, it is worth the House knowing that at the current pace, it will take 283 years for women to achieve equal representation in tech. That is why I am proud that the Secretary of State for Science, Innovation and Technology has launched the Women in Tech Task Force to champion diversity in the UK tech sector, with a pipeline strengthened by stronger engagement with tech in the classroom. There are spaces in which our economy is going to grow, and we need a plan for women to be part of it. Because through history, Madam Deputy Speaker, women have consistently been the backbone of our communities, giving their power, their time, their ideas and more. And they have done this in our classrooms, our offices, our hospitals, our military and in the home. History has taught us that despite giving so much, women don't always gain equally to men. Every day, women and girls across the UK challenge the stereotypes so often thrown upon them. But they are our scientists, our teachers, our business leaders, our astronauts, our athletes, and so much more. There is nowhere that women and girls should not be able to reach. But while this government has women's equality firmly on the agenda, the battle is not yet won. Increasingly loud voices attempt to dismiss the necessary protections for an inclusive culture at work. Some argue that our existing equality framework has gone too far, that it hinders progress. Let us be clear, Madam Deputy Speaker, these protections embody British values, that women should be treated equally with men, or that you should be treated equally regardless of your race. That is a core British value. It was fought for. The Equality Act last September was described by a now Reform MP as fuelling a corrosive culture of grievance in a Westminster Hall debate, who then called for it to be abolished. But it is not a grievance to recognise that a woman made redundant for being pregnant, or who leaves work because her employer doesn't make reasonable adjustments for the menopause, leaves us poorer as individuals, as an economy, and as society. And this battle, these voices, they are taking up space online too. When we look at the level of online abuse and intimidation, we must tackle this misogynistic insurgency that threatens to roll back women's rights and is having a huge impact on the well-being and aspiration of women and girls across our country too. Online abuse of women athletes is set to be discussed at the next Women's Sports Task Force meeting. And I'm proud that the offence of creating intimate images without consent was signed into force last month, and that our female Secretary of State announced it will be made a priority offence under the Online Safety Act, delivering the strongest protections for users from such content. But this only happens against a backdrop of changing. Social attitudes, which we are only just beginning to address. New research from Ipsos Murray and the Global Institute for Women's Leadership at King's Business School shows that 31% of Gen Z men born between 1997 and 2012 agree that a wife should always obey her husband, and 1/3, 33%, say that a husband should have the final word on important decisions, according to a new global study of 23,000 people in 29 countries. We are in a renewed battle of ideas and new conversations about progress and rights, with pressures and influence we also see through online social influences. It demands that we engage, and it is through conversation, legislation, education and campaigning that this government is determined to keep us moving forward. But with the challenge to women's equality now being international, so must our response be. In the year 2000, we led the first UN Security Council resolution on women, peace and security. It was a simple but transformative idea that peace is more durable when women help shape it. UN women statistics show that when women meaningfully participate in peace processes, the resulting agreement is 64% less likely to fail and 35% more likely to last at least 15 years. Women and girls are disproportionately affected by conflict and are more likely to see their rights curtailed. 60% of preventable maternal deaths and 53% of under 5s deaths take place in settings of conflict and displacement. We continue to use our voice at the United Nations to push for women to be embedded in peace processes, resolutions and humanitarian responses. Indeed, this week, Baroness Smith of Malvern and the UK Special Envoy for Women and Girls, Harriet Harman, are leading our delegation at the Commission on the Status of Women in New York, because this government stands in solidarity with women and girls, not just in the UK, but around the world. Yeah. So to conclude, Madam Deputy Speaker, International Women's Day marks the beginning not only of a month-long celebration of women's history, but also, I hope, a year of progress and action. The theme for this year's International Women's Day is Give to Gain, the aim of which is to emphasise power of reciprocity and support, whether through advocacy, education, mentoring or time, to help create a more supportive and interconnected world. Building new networks in our communities to bring hope, leadership and change, renewing our determination, connecting with our sisters at home and abroad, will give us a renewed front line to resist the rollback of our rights and push forward for the progress of women and girls for generations to come. But this month is more than about reflection. It is about maintaining momentum. As Ruth Bader Ginsburg said, women belong in all places where decisions are being made. That isn't an observation, it's a directive. It is for us, Madam Deputy Speaker, to hold the light up, to highlight progress, and to keep fighting for a better world for women and girls everywhere.
Yeah. The question is that this House has considered International Women's Day, and I call the Shadow Minister, Joy Morrissey.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It is a privilege to be representing today the International Women's Day debate and to follow the Honourable Lady. And it is wonderful to hear the Honourable Lady talk about her passion for fighting for inequality and for the rights and to fight the gender pay gap as well. And I hope very soon to see you in Shadow Cabinet, to see the member in Shadow Cabinet. Yes. Yeah, I mean real cabinet. Yeah, not us. Yeah, that would be terrible for you. You wouldn't like that. And that topic is what unites us today in this chamber, that we may have differences of opinion on every topic and come at every ideological point of view, but we are united in our ability to exercise that right to debate and to stand up for women. Yep. And I am so grateful to be part of this country and to be able to have those rights that so many women no longer have across the world. And I'd like to pay tribute to Madam Deputy Speaker for not only her amazing work here in the chamber of keeping us all under control, but which is a full-time job for anyone. But it is more, I just wanted to highlight the incredible work that Madam Deputy Speaker has done to champion Uyghur women and girls. Yeah. When everyone was turning their back on Uyghur women and girls, Madam Deputy Speaker, you led the campaign. Yeah. You tirelessly campaigned across the world to make sure that their story was heard and that their voice was heard, and you worked cross-party for that. So thank you from everyone across this House for your incredible work.
Please. I'm incredibly grateful, which is why I was then sanctioned by the Chinese Communist Party. But there's a lot of very powerful women in this room that won't be deterred by any sanctions regardless. So please continue. Joy Morrissey.
I feel that if one has received sanctions, it is a badge of honour. Firstly, to honour the international scope of this debate, I would like to take this moment to think about the women of Afghanistan who have suffered under the Taliban. The life of all human beings is intrinsically valuable and should always be remembered. And Afghan women whose rights have been systematically dismantled, 100 decrees to restrict their freedom of movement, education, work, expression, visiting a doctor, financial freedom, and there is no protection against violence, beatings, and forced child marriage. May we remember them today, and how quickly the rights we take for granted can disappear. Both across this House and throughout our great country, women have shaped our communities, strengthened our institutions throughout the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth, and led with courage, determination, and resilience. Women are leaders in business, in education, in science, in armed forces, in charities and volunteer organizations, and of course, here in Parliament. We must also recognize the women who contributed, who are often not recognized. The carers who support their families every day with no thanks and no recognition. The volunteers who hold our communities together. The mothers, the daughters, the sisters, the friends who provide strength and stability in the time we need it most. I have often spoken in this House about the importance of service to our communities and service to our country. That spirit of sacrifice and service is embodied by countless women across the United Kingdom who quietly make an extraordinary difference in the lives of others. May we recognize their contributions today.
Goodbye, Honourable Friend Giveaway.
I will.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way, and I just wondered if she would join me in thanking and celebrating the women, the fantastic women in Bognor Regis and Littlehampton, who do exactly what she has just described in businesses, in our local democracy, in our third sector, and in shaping the futures of our girls in community groups and schools.
Thank you. And I wholeheartedly agree with the comments to praise the unpraised volunteers, the community organizers, those that make our towns and villages what they are today. And it is so important that we highlight their contributions today. And in my constituency of Beaconsfield, Marlow, and the South Bucks villages, I see inspiring and dedicated women every single day. Carers fighting for their disabled children, like Hazel, fighting for the Burnham Day Centre to remain open, healthcare professionals at Wexham Park Hospital, entrepreneurs like Ali and Lizzie McIntosh, who are now global presenters for F1 and leading the way in lifestyle influencing. And I wish I had their social media talents. And volunteers dedicating their time to strengthening our communities. Their contribution should remind us that leadership is not confined to these corridors of power, but exists in every town, village, and neighbourhood across the nation. And may I pay tribute to the Taplow Burnham Hitcham Women's Institute for their tireless service to our community and their wonderful 100-year celebration to their branch and the opening of their building 100 years ago by Lady Asta. We owe a great debt to the woman who went before us, and none more so than Nancy Asta. Nancy Asta was a pioneer for women in Parliament, and with her early pioneering, it brought early exposure to the American accent in this place, and it has taken this place 100 years to recover from that. And, Madam Deputy Speaker, it will probably take another 100 years to recover from this. Yes, yes. But we live in hope. And she was a pioneer in other ways, Madam Deputy Speaker, fighting for children and, more importantly, the vulnerable. She supported initiatives to protect children, including raising the age of consent, fought to tackle children living in appalling conditions, helping countless women and girls. What we saw in Nancy Asta was a female leader prepared to confront the uncomfortable and endure the hostility. Many opposed her campaigns, but she carried on, even Churchill, but she carried on. She carried on, and it is wonderful to follow in her footsteps today. That leadership and determination to fight for the voiceless lives on in many outstanding women today. I will give way.
On the point of raising Nancy Asta, there is a statue of Nancy Asta in Plymouth. And in my constituency of Chichester, we have 11 statues that are available for people to view, and none of them are of women? And does she think that it's so important that when we think about how we represent women through history, they need to be represented not physically, but also in statue form? And would she join my campaign to get a statue of an amazing suffragist erected in Chichester, outside Chichester Cathedral, Margaret Ethel Turner, affectionately known as Madge Turner, who was our own suffragette in Chichester? And this campaign has been launched by the Chichester Women's History Group. Does she agree with me that it's a campaign we should all get behind?
Absolutely do agree, and I support the member in pursuing this wonderful statue for Madge, and I lend you my full support in that campaign. And it is fitting that on International Women's Day, the UN's theme is rights, justice, and action for all women and girls. 3 important words that matter to women and girls: rights, justice, action. It is fitting because there are many areas where those rights and that justice and the call to action have been pursued by inspirational women in the face of hostility, not dissimilar to what Nancy Asta faced in her time. And many members across this House have faced similar challenges. And no matter what party we are from, I must respect, Madam Deputy Speaker, the courage that many who have gone before me have blazed the trail for coming to this chamber, fighting for our rights, fighting for the right to be heard, and on their contributions and sacrifice, we are allowed to debate today. And I'd like to start by mentioning a member in this House that has battled for safe spaces for women and sex-based rights. And that is the foundation for which true protection for women and girls needs to start. And none have fought that battle with more energy, resilience, and determination than the honourable member for Canterbury. Fighting tirelessly to protect children and women and girls. She deserves our thanks and our respect for all she has done. In the other place, my noble friend Baroness Jenkin of Kennington and Baroness Davis of Devonport led the way in protecting women and girls, again facing much hostility, but never once deterred from doing what they believed to be right. A champion of women-only spaces and defense of biological sex is, and of course outside of this House, is J.K. Rowling, a woman who has been nothing short of inspirational, facing down personal threats to her safety, determined to ensure the rights of women are heard. And the leader of the opposition, who firmly took a stance to protect women and girls for years when very few joined her to stand up for those safe spaces. It is for that reason that we must also be clear that we as a society have failed many young girls for far too long. I will.
Thank the Honourable Lady for giving way, but I'd also like to make the point that there are many people with different views across this House, and many of which I agree with, and she makes a very good point in naming some of the individuals, but there are many, many other women that stand up for sex-based rights, and I'd like to say that on the floor of the House, and I thank her for her words.
Thank you for that. And there are many women from all different ideological perspectives who have contributed to this debate, and I want to thank them. Of course.
For giving way. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I thank the Honourable Member for giving way. And in her speech, we should also recognise that some people have also been transphobic. We must be very mindful that there are a lot of people who are trans, who feel very vulnerable at this time, and some have committed suicide. So in this debate, can we also hold them in our thoughts?
Yeah. And may I thank the member for that very nuanced response and contribution, and may I thank her for being the first female of color at the dispatch box, leading the way, and also a chairman of a select committee, and someone who all members of this House from every party respect and admire, and thank you for everything that you do. And as we try to protect young women and girls, No clearer or more scandalous a failure than the rape gangs scandal that we are now confronting. Here I want to pay tribute to the Honourable Member for Rotherham and the Honourable Member for Keighley and Ingley, who have both raised this in Parliament, along with Alex Stafford, who is no longer in this place, and the Honourable Member for Ashfield, a cross-party effort of raising this issue time and time again, while very few other members of this House did so. May I commend them for being brave enough to do so. And yes, may I thank. There are so many that I'm not able to thank today, but I want to recognize them as best that I can. And Baroness Casey said, too many shield away from the issue of ethnicity in the rape gang scandal. These honourable members did not. That is real leadership from cross-party members for protecting women and girls. This International Women's Day, let us unite in clear determination that where Nancy Asta led in confronting injustice for the voiceless, parliamentarians of today will follow. Speaking up for the rights of women to women-only spaces, making sure that no matter the community or ethnicity or religion, we will never again let a scandal like the rape gangs go unchallenged. And Madam Deputy Speaker, as someone who has fought for women and girls and abuse, sexual abuse, and child sexual exploitation, I think that this is something that we can, every member of this House can support and look at how we can protect women and girls, no matter who they are, no matter where they are from, moving forward. And I believe that that is something we can all agree on. And for International Women's Day to matter, it must be more than symbolic. It must combine celebration with action. It must be a further catalyst for rights, justice, and action for women and girls. It must harden our resolve to ensure safety for all women and girls. It must set in clear focus our collective determination that this will be a country where women and girls from every race, religion, and creed are able to contribute their talents to our country with the certainty that we will keep them safe for rights, justice, and action. Our women and girls deserve nothing less. Thank you.
Tulip Sadiq.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you to all the inspirational speeches we've heard so much. This year, International Women's Day feels particularly poignant to me for two reasons. The first is watching the women in Iran. And the reason why this has particularly affected me is because many of you, including you, Madam Deputy Speaker, will remember the fight for 6 years to bring back my constituent, Nazneen Zaghari-Ratcliffe. And during that time, I encountered the brutality of the Iranian regime whenever we tried to negotiate her return to our country, and the way that they treated her like she was nothing, in all honesty, and the worthlessness that was attached to her identity. And now watching women who are fighting just for education, just for the right to dress the way that they want, just for the right to live, bombing primary schools full of little girls is something that's really hard to fathom. And every morning, no matter what happens, we wake up feeling very lucky because we know we can walk to work, get on the tube, and we will be safe. And our thoughts today are with the people who are in Iran, especially the women, who are fighting for justice. The second reason that International Women's Day this year particularly feels poignant to me is because of the case that I'm dealing with in Bright Horizons Nursery in my constituency, which some people in the Chamber would have heard me speak about. And Vincent Chand operated for 7 years undetected, preying on little girls and babies and toddlers, inflicting pain on them and conducting sexual abuse, something that he had already done in his previous workplace, was undetected, given a job in the place where parents entrusted people to look after their children when they went to work, and came back and found out. And they only found out because he had been reported by a brave whistleblower for acts of cruelty towards children, for bullying, not for sexual abuse. And it's only when police decided to seize his devices, including nursery iPads, so he had filmed himself acting acts of violence against little girls in the nursery itself, used it to airdrop the images to his own devices, and that's how he was found out. It makes you think about how much work we have to do to combat violence against girls and women, and that the fight is not over. And I'm pleased to be here today, surrounded by women who have been fighting that, and I hope people like Vincent Chand do get the absolute justice that they should get, and do end up behind closed doors and behind bars as well. And I just want to pay tribute to all the mothers of the children who are affected in the nursery, who have made sure that this never happens again. They are the ones at the moment who are fighting for mandatory CCTV. They are the ones who are fighting to make sure that there's a 2-person rule per child in every room in nurseries. They're the ones who are now fighting for a flare system so that whistleblowing can be done properly and without fear, and that it's not nurseries marking their own homework. But every time I speak about this case, I also want to say that for all the cases that have happened of sexual abuse in nurseries and early years practitioners, there are 1,000 and million other babysitters, staff members and nursery staff workers who look after our children day in, day out, and make sure they're loved and protected. So let's make sure we don't tar everyone with the same brush. But we do need to take it seriously, and something does need to be done. But today I want to talk about my brave constituents, Shunju Paul, who is in the gallery today. The focus of the UN this International Women's Day, as the opposition spokesperson said, is rights, justice and action. And because across the world, women and girls just have 64% of the rights of men, and that's why I want to concentrate on Shunju's case today. Some of you in the chamber would have heard me mention her before, because after 6 years of fighting a legal battle against her former employer, a management consultancy firm, she won a landmark case against unfair dismissal at the Employment Appeal Tribunal in London. Her case sets legal precedent for endometriosis to be considered a disability under the Equality Act 2010. Madam Deputy Speaker, I hope you'll indulge me a bit while I talk about Shunju Paul's case, because I feel like everyone in the chamber, including everyone in the world, should be listening to what she had to go through. In 2018, Shunju was diagnosed with severe endometriosis, where she had large fluid-filled cysts on both of her ovaries. This required an immediate operation. She returned to work a month later in severe pain, she told me. She was bleeding. She could hardly walk because she had been pushing herself too much for promotion to senior manager. She told HR, she told them in explicit detail how much pain that she was in. After 3 months after her phased return to work ended, without any warning, Shunju was sacked. She was told to leave the building immediately. Do not contact all the colleagues that you had been working for 10 years now. Just get out of the building, be quiet, and leave. She had worked there for 10 years, and she told me categorically that her entire life was based around her work and making sure that she looked after people that she was serving at Accenture. She was sacked for not being ready for promotion within a required time frame. This is known as the up or out policy used by many corporates, where employees can be dismissed if their manager believes they cannot be promoted. The termination letter, which, by the way, she received minutes after the meeting that she had, did not state any actual reason for her dismissal. It also didn't inform her about the right to appeal or refer to the policy that was being followed. Now, if you'll excuse me for saying, as a Camden girl through and through, who went to Camden School for Girls, she decided not to take this lying down. She took it to internal tribunal, where the High Court later found out that the panel had completely disregarded what she had written in her impact statement. When she took it to tribunal, it ruled that Shunju had not proved that her illness had an ongoing substantial effect on her daily life, and stated that many women with endometriosis had mild or no symptoms at all. The tribunal rejected her claim for disability discrimination and lacked any understanding of the physical impact of her health condition on her own body. She appealed this decision, and High Court eventually ruled that she was unfairly dismissed from her job without her employer following a fair capability procedure or providing any reasonable adjustments after she was disabled because of her health condition. I am so proud of Shonju for her tireless campaigning since her unfair dismissal in 2019, and employers now must follow this judgment on considering endometriosis as a disability and providing reasonable adjustments. More needs to be done to ensure that this does not happen to other women who are physically left disabled by this condition and other gynecological conditions. And I know my friend, the MP for Erupts has done some brilliant work in this area for years now, but we need a collective voice. We need everyone in the chamber to stand up and speak about this, because it has been taboo for too long now. And it is shocking, if the Minister is listening, that not a single gynecological condition is introduced in the Disability Guidance of the Equality Act. This basic change could have saved Shonju her job. So much time, money and anxiety that she spent 6 years fighting for this unfair dismissal. It could have made a huge difference for countless other women that we haven't heard about, who are facing the same discrimination in the workplace across the country. 1 in 10 women are suffering from endometriosis. 69% of sufferers say that they face discrimination at work. Cases like this are far too common, and it's left us with 1 in 6 women with endometriosis unemployed because of their condition. Women should not be forced to go to tribunal just to get the rights that they deserve, and that's why I believe women with endometriosis should be given specific workplace adjustments and the right to reasonable adjustments to their condition. And alongside that, endometriosis should be listed under recurring and fluctuating impairments in the guidance for the Equality Act, so that employers actually understand their legal duty to provide reasonable adjustments to women who are suffering for this condition. And finally,
I thank my honourable friend for giving way. You may be coming to this, but it is an incredible... Oh, sorry, Madam Deputy.
Don't wish to correct any one of our fantastic female parliamentarians, but you means me. You means me. One more time. Dawn Butler.
Thank you. And you are amazing, Madam Deputy Speaker. My honourable friend may be coming to this, but my friend Elaine Banton was the lawyer in this case. And I just wanted to also put that on record to your excellent remarks for your constituent.
Well done, Dawn.
Thank you to my honourable friend, and Elaine Banton definitely deserves a mention in the workplace as well. There's a lot more I'd like to say about this case because I think it's so important, but I'm very conscious that I don't want to take up too much time because there's so many women who want to speak today in the debate. But I just want to mention that growing up, and I did grow up in a Muslim Asian household, but even then, I didn't hear anything about endometriosis. I never heard the word menopause growing up. If I was ever on my period, I was told to quickly move away and listen and change and make sure my brother didn't hear anything. There is a point at which we need to change that. My mother was very forward in other ways. Growing up in a Muslim household, on Friday nights, we always had dinner with our Jewish neighbours. She was very clear about the fact that in our house you could celebrate Christmas, Eid, Durga Puja, Hanukkah. You could do whatever you wanted because we were citizens of the world. But if you ever mentioned your period, menopause, or endometriosis, that was simply not allowed. So for the sake of Shonju's case, but also for all the South Asian mothers who are listening out there, this is the time when we need to break the taboo. We need to talk about conditions that affect women, particularly when it affects young girls as well, so they don't feel ashamed and they don't feel like they have to hide it if they're affected by the conditions in the workplace.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way. She's making an incredibly powerful point. But if we are going to really change things, we actually need fathers to speak to their daughters. And I recall making a very deliberate point when my daughter started menstruating and standing in the supermarket trying to assess and understand what I was faced with a wall of things, and people coming up to me and saying, do you want some help? And saying, no, I need to work my way through this. And we need men to advocate and understand these things as well.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for that point. And I wholeheartedly agree with my honourable friend, who is a staunch feminist, and which is one of the reasons why he's in this debate speaking today. But I'll finish now by saying that the justice that was served to Shonju is not just a victory for herself. It's for the countless women across the country who fought so hard to get reasonable adjustments in the workplace. And I hope the Minister will consider this case and legislation will follow from the Labour government to ensure that women never have to face discrimination in the workplace again.
Fantastic speeches. To stop me interrupting them, you and your, unless you're referring to the chair, should not be said at all. Now I'll come to the Liberal Democrat spokesperson, Alex Brewer.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. This year's theme, as we have heard, is Give to Gain, and that prompted me to think about feminism on a global scale and how interconnected we truly all are. Our globalised world is far from isolated countries bounded by iron borders. We exist in physical space and online. Our geopolitical landscape is shifting constantly, and feminism must move with it. The experiences of women are shaped by overlapping factors of race, class, disability, migration status, sexuality, faith, and geography. Feminism policy cannot be effective if it only reflects the lives of the most privileged. Some of the gravest injustices faced by women globally include physical violence, forced marriage, and economic exclusion, and these fall hardest on those at multiple intersections of disadvantage. Progress for women is never a zero-sum game. When we lift up the most marginalised, we all rise. Which is why Give to Gain is such an important theme and has made me reflect on how we as a country and as a society must give through overseas aid if we are to help build a more progressive, fair and stable world. So today, Madam Deputy Speaker, I want to raise one of the most difficult and taboo subjects in the area of violence against women and girls, but it is one we must confront. That of female genital mutilation, commonly known as FGM or cutting. This is a sensitive and distressing topic, but to break taboos, we must start to articulate the problem. Female genital mutilation comprises all procedures that involve partial or total removal of the external female genitalia or injury to the female genital organs for any non-medical reasons. It is steeped in misguided ideas of a woman's virtue, ideas which are pervasive and which manifest in all cultures in different ways, of which FGM is, I believe, one of the most insidious and violent. In January, I travelled to the Gambia as part of a delegation with the Parliamentary Commonwealth Association. FGM was made illegal in the Gambia in 2015, yet the practice continues. In fact, in order to avoid detection, cutting is now carried out on younger and younger girls, and sometimes even on babies, with devastating, sometimes fatal consequences. The practice has no health benefits and causes lifelong problems, including severe bleeding, incontinence, infections, long-term pain, menstrual problems, complications in childbirth, and an increased risk of newborn deaths. Beyond this clear physical trauma, many women live with depression, flashbacks, and lifelong psychological scars. It is a form of torture. FGM is a serious violation of human rights and bodily autonomy, not a cultural inevitability, and more than 4 million girls are at risk every single year. Yet in the Gambia, I also saw hope. I saw the profound impact of not-for-profit and grassroots organisations working creatively and sensitively within communities to remove economic and cultural barriers to change. Data gathering is difficult in a country with such severe levels of poverty, but initial estimates suggest the prevalence of FGM has fallen from around 76% to around 51% of girls. NGOs and grassroots women's organisations are uniquely effective because they are trusted by families and embedded in communities. These organisations are part funded by British overseas aid, which this government is now reducing. Their funding runs out this year, just as the message is starting to get through. Reduction to aid like this tears holes in the safety net for the world's most vulnerable communities and leaves young girls more exposed. The government's decision to reduce the United Kingdom's official development assistance from 0.5% to 0.3% of gross national income will have real-world consequences. It represents the lowest United Kingdom aid contribution as a share of gross national income since 1999 and diminishes our long-standing reputation as a global leader in humanitarian assistance. On the Women and Equalities Committee, in our report on FGM, we were clear. The government must protect funding for programmes that prevent FGM and set out its plans for future investment in this vital work. Instead, in its response, the government confirmed that its flagship programme to end FGM will finish in October 2026 and that there are no plans at all for what comes next. This is not just disappointing, it is deeply irresponsible. When Britain invests in the freedom and well-being of girls globally, we gain a safer, fairer and more stable world. Which is why, when the Liberal Democrats were in government, we secured a commitment of 0.7% of gross national income for overseas aid. FGM is, of course, illegal here too, but in today's global society, British girls are being taken abroad to undergo cutting in areas with fewer protections. In the last decade, more than 41,000 women and girls had FGM identified at an NHS appointment in this country. And yet, in the 5-year period between 2019 and 2024, there was just one conviction under the Female Genital Mutilation Act. Protection must not stop at the border. Intervention must happen before a child boards a plane and after she lands. Frontline NGOs in source countries are often best placed to prevent FGM before it happens. The practice of FGM is rooted in gender inequality, control of girls' bodies and forced silence. True solidarity means recognising that their struggle is our struggle. By supporting global efforts to end FGM through aid and diplomacy, the UK helps meet its international commitments and reduces the chance of FGM happening to people who live here. This government must not be complicit in removing the progress that is preventing such violence against girls, no matter where they are born. Madam Deputy Speaker, understanding intersectionality is vital to feminism today, and I am calling on the government to recognise that in our interconnected world, solving violent crime against women and girls everywhere is everyone's responsibility.
Abina Apongasara.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It's a privilege to speak in International Women's Debate. We reflect the women who have created International Women's Day and the women who have marked every day since. Women across the world of politics, trade unionism, business, science and arts, making strides forward in the face of ignorance and misogyny. Women taking a sledgehammer to the glass ceiling, smashing through the barriers and making space for those who have followed. I reflect on the women who have lit the pathway to my own place in Parliament. The Right Honourable Member for Hackney North and Stoke Newham, the Mother of the House, is an inspiration to so many of us. I'm also thinking of Baroness Harman and Baroness Amos in the other place. And of course, you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And of course, on the front bench, my honourable friends, the Equalities Minister and the Minister for Safeguarding and Violence Against Women and Girls. You have such a long title.
She can't come.
Yes. And all the women I've met through my years leading the Labour Women's Network. These are the giants on the shoulders we stand. They lift us up. And in turn, we must lift others in Parliament and in our communities. And globally too, we have heard in this debate about the status of women globally. Across the globe, women are denied rights, basic rights to school, have a job, be paid equally, enjoy equal legal rights and exercise basic freedoms. For example, Afghanistan, 2.2 million girls are banned from secondary school by the Taliban. Only a quarter have jobs. In particular, cruelty of Afghan women are barred from entering the medical professions, but the Taliban ban women being treated by men. So women are denied the basic right of basic medical care. In Iran, women hold only 64% of legal rights enjoyed by men. In Iran, women are required permissions from husbands to get a passport or travel abroad. Girls as young as 13 can be married if a male judge decrees it. There are no criminal offences of rape within marriage or violence in the home. It is women who are leading the resistance to the Ayatollahs in Iran, risking everything from justice and liberation. And we should take inspiration for women standing up for their rights around the world and here at home. So I'm proud that we've passed the Employment Rights Act, because it's women who will benefit the most, especially low-paid women, women of colour and working-class women. Workers will have a right to guaranteed hours for the first time, which means clarity on how much you will be earning and the stability to plan childcare and family expenditure. This will be life-changing for millions of families. And none of these steps forwards come from a clear blue sky. They come from decades of struggle and argument, reversals and defeats, and step forwards and progress. They come because of the suffragettes campaigning for political rights and the likes of Barbara Castle campaigning for economic rights. So yes, we've seen the progress in social, political and economic fronts, but equality is still a distant dream. As the Minister said, take pay. According to the Office for National Statistics, median weekly earnings for female employees working full-time was £710 at April 2025, compared with 815 for male full-time employees. Equal pay remains some way off. And then also take healthcare. The harsh truth is that women continue to get a raw deal in the healthcare system. We do not enjoy true equality within the NHS. We have a system shaped and largely run by men, with women's health a secondary concern. There is still a male by default culture within the healthcare. And I've been campaigning for faster treatment for endometriosis and fibroids, where 1 in 10 women suffer from these painful and incurable conditions. Yet on average, the length of time women are waiting for diagnosis has gone up to nearly 10 years. It has gone from an average of 8 years to 9 years and 4 months. And if you're a woman of colour, that is literally a double whammy of racism and sexism, where it's gone up by 11 years. So women are waiting in pain for years. Their concerns are dismissed and their pains are ignored. And I've said it before and I'll say it again. If 1 in 10 men suffered painful, incurable disease, no offence, there will be faster treatment and research into cures, times off work and systematic and sympathetic hearing from society. So as it is, women face ignorance, discrimination and stigma when they present crippling, blinding pain and heavy bleeding. So on International Women's Day and this debate, I want to pay tribute to Georgie Willman for creating her brilliant film, This is Endometriosis. I was delighted to see it win Best Short Film at the BAFTA this year. It is a truly well-deserved recognition. I would also like to commend the work of the Chair of the Women and Equalities Committee and the Chair of the APPG for endometriosis, and of course my honourable friend for Hampstead and Highgate, who has been supporting her constituent who was dismissed for working in her organisation for after 10 years because of her condition with endometriosis. Sandra Paul, you are inspiration to us all here, and thank you for the work you have done with your MP in making sure this hits us nationally. Yeah. I have argued that the solutions must include enhanced training for GPs to speed up diagnosis and improving the education of young people and women on menstrual cycle. I'm looking forward to the new women's health strategy, and I hope it places women front and centre in the strive for equality for women within the NHS. I already welcome the shift to use greater use of technology towards local diagnosis hubs and to greater awareness about women's health conditions. But of course, we have far further to march. I take enormous inspiration from women and girls I meet in my constituency who are fearless and driven and dedicated women who want to live out their potentials. So I want to take an opportunity to name a few. Chimamaka Manenke, apologies if I pronounced it wrong. She is a dedicated wife, mother and community champion in Thamesmead who supports others through healthy cooking workshops. Jatinda Rai, who is the CEO of Bexley Voluntary Service Council, who supports charities and communities and local people in my constituency and beyond. Chantel Morris, who I met in one of my constituency surgeries, who shared her experience of homelessness and spoke about her aim to provide support to local people and families facing eviction living in temporary accommodation. So I was delighted to see her organisation hit the ground, and I was delighted to attend her launch of the Morris Mission in Erith last October, where she now provides training to young people to support local people. Jo Dunkley at the Erupts, who has done incredible work bringing the brilliant charity to life through her passion of boxing, shared by so many. They support local adults facing mental health challenges to build confidence, resilience and lasting connections through sport. So I was delighted to cut the ribbon at their new gym in Abbey Wood last November, and since then it has gone from strength to strength, and a huge credit to Jo for making this happen. I also like to pay tribute to the staff at the community hospice where I'm patron. In particular, Anita Saunders, who's stepping into the CEO role from the Director of Income Generation, and Dr. Leslie Ball, the Medical Director, who is also helping to steady the team through their leadership transition. And finally, although I've mentioned her in previous speeches on International Women's Day, I wanted to mention once again the brilliant Kate Heaps. Kate has been the Chief Executive of Community Hospice after nearly 2 decades with her team. She has grown the hospice work and fought hard to improve hospice care locally and nationally. And I want to pay tribute to her and wish her the best luck in her next steps. Madam Deputy Speaker, this is International Women's Day debate, and I want to highlight that I'm proud of what this government has achieved so far towards a fairer, more equal society and economy. I am lifted up by my sisters in Parliament and the amazing women that I meet here on a day-to-day basis in politics and around this place. So even in the darkest times and amidst times of uncertainty, we support each other and we uphold our convictions and our passion and uplift each other in representing our constituents and beyond and fighting on campaigning issues which are important to our constituents.
Thank you. Wendy Chamberlain.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. And on this International Women's Day, I rise to say a few words about the women and girls of Afghanistan, as I am the chair of the APPG for Afghan Women and Girls. And I reflect some of the comments that the Honourable Member for Erith and Thamesmead just made in relation to their experiences. I saw comments in the Telegraph at the weekend that stated the fact that International Women's Day is marked in Afghanistan shows that the day is meaningless, and I would beg to differ with that assessment, particularly given the number of us that are here on a Thursday afternoon. But factually, it's not listed as a holiday in Afghanistan, and we're not seeing celebrations or protests, debates or marketing based on the day itself there, simply because that is not possible for women and girls in Afghanistan. Afghanistan remains a member of the UN, which marks the day, but you don't need to formally indict banning something to effectively do so, not when women cannot gather and they cannot speak, not even in their own homes if they can be heard outside of them. But nonetheless, there is a value to International Women's Day, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I believe even in the darkest of circumstances, there is still value in this day to the women of Afghanistan. As we are hearing in this debate, International Women's Day is about so many struggles, but also about celebrations. And the women of Afghanistan's struggles and the celebration of their resilience has equal value today. And when they cannot speak for themselves, those of us with voices internationally can do so. And indeed, elevating the voices of Afghan women is what the APPG is set up to do. But there is no sugarcoating it, Madam Deputy Speaker. It is bleak in Afghanistan. A new penal code was introduced in January that has effectively legalised domestic violence, including sexual assault within marriages there. Husbands are explicitly authorised to discipline their wives for non-specified transgressions. And the only crime in the books is for a husband who beats his wife with a stick in such a way that it causes severe injury, such as a broken bone. The burden of proof for this offence lies on the woman, and the punishment, if proven, is just 15 days in prison. Injuring animals in Afghanistan carries a greater penalty. And I doubt if we will ever see a prosecution under this law, given that gathering the proof that required would involve the husband who has committed the assault chaperoning his wife to hospital to get the evidential X-ray required. And on the other hand, if a woman tries to leave a marriage by visiting her father or relatives and does so without her husband's consent or refuses to return, you can imagine circumstances where somebody would look to do that in order to escape domestic violence in their house. Then that woman can go to prison for 3 months. And if a woman is found to have abandoned Islam, and I believe here we are talking about the Taliban's interpretation of the faith, which many disagree with, then she can be jailed indefinitely with 10 lashes daily until she chooses to return to the religion. There are severe restrictions on working, which the Honourable Member for Erith and Thamesmead referred to. Some organisations in some areas have negotiated the right for women to keep their jobs. Women still can provide health care, though increasingly women are being denied the right to be trained in healthcare, which means that you can very easily see what that means for the future of maternal and female care in Afghanistan. But we are certainly a long way away from there being a freedom to work, and financial autonomy is simply not a reality. And the future for the next generation is even bleaker. For girls now growing up without completing their education and without women being able to have medical training, there will be a point where there are no women left to provide that healthcare. And the reality is that in a country at war, at the forefront of the climate crisis, where 17 million people faced acute hunger this winter, and with millions of displaced people returning from its neighbours, including Iran, it is women who are bearing the brunt of the desolation. And I'm aware that in setting out this reality, I'm not elevating the experiences or feelings or voices of any one woman. There are 25 million women in Afghanistan, and each and every one of them should have the right to speak, to live freely, and indeed to live at all. And prior to 2021, they were able to do so. So on this International Women's Day, I would like to see commitments from the government to the women and girls of Afghanistan. I put on the record that I do not agree with the government's decision to close the door on safe and legal routes to refuge or to study or work. I was told on Monday here in the Chamber by the Minister responding to the statement on the government's response to immigration that it was about ensuring that universities were not making the decisions in relation to who got to stay here. But if there are no other ways for people to come and seek safe refuge, it is not surprising that people take that opportunity. And if they no longer have that opportunity, it will not be surprising if they revert to circumstances such as irregular routes And by that I mean the small boats that we all say we want to prevent. But having made those decisions, I call on the government to do more in Afghanistan, much more. The Minister at the outset in her remarks talked about the work this government does overseas, but I do beg to differ in that assessment. Afghanistan is not one of the ring-fenced countries that the government has featured as it looks to cut ODA spending. But Afghanistan is apparently a priority. I'd really like to understand what that means and what that looks like. I think it's important that we also recognise the strength of Afghan women. The APPG has had the privilege of hearing from several Afghan women in the last year, as well as NGOs and academics who've spent time on the ground. We've heard a lot, unsurprisingly, about the loss of hope, but we've also heard about resilience, the unbelievable resilience. Afghan women live in unthinkable circumstances for any of us here, but they keep on. And whilst this is a speech setting out terrible things, I'm not asking you to pity the women and girls in Afghanistan. In talking about them, I'm asking you to take action. And I know, Madam Deputy Speaker, you were previously a member of the APPG in the last Parliament and how supportive you were and continue to be. But to end, I want to share the remarks that the APPG heard last year from a female medical practitioner on the ground who told us that she was speaking to us as parliamentarians as a witness to the quiet suffering and untold strength of Afghan women. These stories are not just tragic, they are powerful, and they must inform policy decisions and humanitarian priorities moving forward. I urge the government to heed those words.
Madam Deputy Speaker, it's my absolute pleasure to rise to speak in this year's debate to mark International Women's Day. The important day that it is does give us an opportunity not only to reflect on how far women have come, but disappointingly how far we have yet to go, but it also allows us to recognise the women who continue to shape and strengthen our communities every single day. And I want to use my time today to celebrate some of the remarkable women across South Derbyshire who are making a real difference. It's my absolute favourite thing to do to make sure people feel seen in this place. Firstly, Khalila's story. Khalila is my right-hand woman in the constituency. She runs my office and I honestly do not know what I would do without her. I'm sure many of us across this house will probably share the experience with some incredible women in their teams. Also, I'd like to give a shout out to Lib Orm and correct a mistake I made in business questions this morning when I didn't give recognition to her as being the founder of I Love Swad, which is a Facebook page which has got almost 46,500 members. Incredible achievement. And also Leslie Aspey. Now, I hope Leslie Aspey feels seen by me for the woman she is, both in the constituency as her MP and in this place. She will know why I've mentioned her name. In Melbourne, Sharon Brown is the driving force behind the wonderfully vibrant Melbourne Festival of Arts and Architecture, which last year celebrated its 20th year. She also manages the Creative Melbourne Gallery. Through her work, she has brought art, culture and creativity to the heart of her community, creating opportunities for artists and inspiring residents and visitors alike. Also using creativity as a force for good is Julie Batten. She's the director of People Express. Julie has led the organisation since 1992, and under her leadership, it has used the arts as a powerful tool for engagement, working with a diverse range of people across our community and enabling them to become the writers, filmmakers and artists of their own stories. Her work helps ensure the creativity is truly accessible to everyone. Supporting local enterprise is Keely Briggs, a marketing expert who provides networking opportunities for businesses across South Derbyshire, particularly in Swadlincote. She is a passionate champion of small businesses and organises the annual Small Business Showcase, giving local entrepreneurs a platform to grow and succeed. Entrepreneurship is also embodied by Elaine Pennell, the founder of Lemon and Lime Interiors, whose business has grown into a highly successful company, supporting homeowners and property professionals alike. Supporting that growth with her is Katie Lavis, who started her own business and now works with Lemon and Lime as it continues to expand. Another fantastic local entrepreneur is Tracy Payne, whose work and dedication exemplify the determination and creativity of women running small businesses in our community. Public service is another area where women across South Derbyshire make an enormous contribution. And Angela Archer, Chair of South Derbyshire District Council, is a passionate advocate for children with special educational needs and disabilities. As a parent of SEND children herself, she co-founded the charity Shout to support families navigating the challenges that SEND can bring. There are also people like Keddy Bailey, who quietly supports families of SEND children, demonstrating the compassion and commitment that empowers families at times of significant challenge. In the voluntary sector, I want to recognise the work of Holly Benton, Chief Executive of South Derbyshire CVS, and Petra Parker, who manages their food hub. Together, they support local people to access food parcels, befriending services, help to return home after a hospital stay, and a wide range of support, ensuring that no one in our community feels alone when they need help the most. Ingrid van der Wiede, editor of the local publication Swadstyle, keeps residents informed about what is happening across Swadlincote and the surrounding area. She also leads the wonderful Swadlincote Festival of Words, taking place later this month, which celebrates literature, storytelling and creativity for all ages. Our cultural heritage is also being preserved thanks to Becca King, the museum manager at Sharp's Pottery Museum, who works tirelessly to ensure that our local history is accessible, engaging and celebrated. I would also like to recognise Peggy Moore, whose dedication to remembrance in our community is truly extraordinary. Peggy has spent countless hours knitting poppies, creating a life-size knitted Tommy soldier and collecting donations for the Royal British Legion Poppy Appeal. Her dedication ensures that the sacrifices of those who served are never forgotten. I also want to recognise Maria Hansen, MBE, founder of charity Me&D. Since founding the charity in 2006, Maria has dedicated herself to supporting families facing life-changing and life-limiting conditions. Her vision, compassion and determination have helped thousands of families across the UK, and this remarkable work has been recognised with the charity being awarded the King's Award for Voluntary Service. In my constituency, there are also women whose leadership continues to inspire long after they've left public office. One such person is Edwina Curry, the first female MP for South Derbyshire. To this day, residents still speak fondly of her to me as a dedicated constituency MP who worked tirelessly on their behalf. I'd also like to give a special mention to Margaret Garner, an absolute gem in our community, in Repton in particular. Margaret, now in her 80s, is an incredibly loyal and supportive friend, a volunteer for many activities in Repton, and swears like a trooper. She is the kind of person who lifts those around her, brings humour and honesty wherever she goes, and reminds us all of the strength and spirit that runs through so many women in our communities. And of course, none of us would be here today without the women who came before us and fought to open the doors of democracy. One such woman from my constituency is Hannah Mitchell, a suffragette who lived in Newhall in the early 1900s, an activist, a rebel, and one of the many women who challenged inequality and fought for women's rights to take part in public life. Madam Deputy Speaker, the women I've mentioned today come from many different walks of life, from business, the arts, public service, charity work and community leadership. What unites them is their determination to make the places they live better for others. There are, of course, so many incredible women across South Derbyshire. Giving a few shout-outs today inevitably means I have missed someone. But I hope this speech goes some way towards recognising the extraordinary contribution that women make across our communities every single day. Thank you.
Right, we now have a maiden speech. Can I first of all say a reminder, Rod, there is no interruptions during this maiden speech. Anna Spencer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 4 weeks ago today, I was in college, a plumber learning how to plaster, and today I'm in Parliament as an MP. And being here is the honour of my life, but I don't want this to be unusual or exceptional. I truly believe that anyone doing a job like mine should get a seat on these benches. And where I'm from, we're taught to look after each other, to look out for each other, to stick up for each other and to stick together, to see each other as human. And I'm so proud of that humanity, and that people in Gorton and Denton and Burnage and Levenshulme and Longside and Abbey Hay feel that way too. It's in our blood and in our bones. We see each other as human. Where I'm from, we give a nod to the statue of Emmeline Pankhurst. We remember the farm worker and seamstress Hannah Mitchell, the trade unionist Mary Quayle and the mill worker Annie Kenny. And of course, Elsie Plant, who's from just down the road from me and who I named one of my beautiful greyhounds after. I think of these brilliant women a lot, and especially today as we debate International Women's Day. And I think of many others too, from pits, slums and factories, the women who changed the system so that I could be here, the women of colour whose names we will never know because history didn't bother to recognise or remember them, but we do today because without their struggle and their fight and their determination to stick together, none of this could be possible. And it's bittersweet to recognise these brilliant people, but to be reminded that we still need to try and be them. The constituency that elected me is the 15th most deprived constituency in the country. It has suffered decades of neglect and broken promises. And we see this every day right in front of us. The litter, the fly tipping, the state of housing, the struggle for a job that you can build a life on, the filthy, polluted air and the reduced life chances, the sheer unfairness of it all. And my constituency has been hit hard by the ongoing cost of living crisis. And now none of this is fair, none of this is right, and none of it happens by accident. So I very much share my predecessor's strong commitment to tackling health inequalities and putting local people and all of our communities at the heart of decision making. That's how we begin to turn things around, to give people agency and a genuine chance of a better today and a better tomorrow. And to the girls who I saw photos of, who went to school on International Women's Day dressed as Hannah the plumber, in their overalls, spanners and trademark hair. To the 10-year-old boy at Hideout who rock climbed an incredibly high wall with me and who saw me suddenly become very terrified of how far up I was, and who said to me, "Don't ever give up, and if it's scary looking down, then just look at what's in front of you." To the women in my life who've had my back, who've fought for equality alongside me, and to the men that I work with, especially the lads on my plastering course who dealt with my newfound spotlight in the middle of our training very well. But those men who will suffer the effects of this unequal society through their mental health. To the veterans of this unequal society through their mental health. To the veterans I know who were willing to risk everything and come home and find that society was turning its back on them. To the white working classes who are always lumped into one group and never appreciated. To everyone who will have nowhere to sleep tonight or will barely exist in a cold, damp and insecure home. To my trans siblings who get blamed for everything. To the Muslims everywhere who are constantly and often violently scapegoated. To the disabled people who can't access the world because of structural inequality that is completely fixable. To the people of colour who have to work harder at everything. I don't always get it. I won't say I always understand it. But what I do know is what it feels like to be looked down on, to be let down and left behind, to be less worthy because of something about me. And our struggles may be different, but our humanity is the same. We always stick together. We always fight for each other. And that is what I want us to take forward from International Women's Day, and to do that every single day. The cleaners, the bus drivers, the nursery workers, the foster carers, the home carers, the unpaid carers, the teaching assistants, the bin collectors, the warehouse workers, the delivery drivers, the school dinner staff, the lollipop wardens, the supermarket workers, the posties, the library staff, the kitchen porters, the farm workers, the mechanics, the ground workers, the scaffolders, the electricians, the plasterers and the plumbers. We deserve to be here, every single one of us. And I will make space for you to come and join me, to get to have your say. And from the bustle of Longsight Market to the many Irish pubs in Levy, Sue's Chippy and Tony at California Wines in Gorton, the amazing young people at Hideout, the best hash brown butty at Cafe Plus in Denton, and the women-led social enterprise at Dahlia Cafe on Burnage Lane. You are the best of our brilliant communities. I want to put Gorton and Denton on the map by championing the positives about our community. The spirit, the warmth, the grit, and the way that we help each other out every single day. Whether that's our neighbours where we live or our siblings in places like Afghanistan, Gaza, Sudan, Iran, wherever we are, we deserve to live freely as the human beings that we all are. We do things differently in Manchester, and it makes me proud every single day. And now I want to make Abbey Hay, Levenshulme, Burnage, Longsight, Gorton and Denton proud of me. Thank you so much for putting your faith in this plumber and newly qualified plasterer. Together we can make Hope normal again, and we will look after each other, whoever we are, because where I'm from, that is just what we do. Thank you.
Can I just say, and at least you can cross the football political divide by being a Bolton Wanderers supporter. Melanie Ward.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and let me start by congratulating the Honourable Member for Gorton and Denton on her first speech in this place. I welcome her to her place, and I don't know if she's noticed that the Palace of Westminster is in need of some maintenance, and so it's entirely possible that both her plastering and her plumbing skills will come in useful in the very near future. I rise to speak in my first International Women's Debate, and I have followed this particular debate, Mr Speaker, since before I was elected, and so it's a true privilege to take part today. And I have to say, and forgive me, Mr Speaker, but if the composition of this chamber, by which I mean the number of men and women relative to each other, was like this more often, I feel like we might have some different kinds of debates in this chamber. Today we celebrate women in our communities and across our country and our world. We celebrate extraordinary women who achieve incredible things for the good of humanity. And in that context, it is a great but sad honour to sit opposite the coat of arms of my late dear friend Jo Cox, with whom I served on the board of the Labour Women's Network, and think of her every time I come to this place and see her coat of arms. We miss her and her contributions dearly. I've previously mentioned Jenny Lee in my contributions, a proud Fifer who grew up in Cowdenbeath in my constituency and served as a Labour MP for 2 different spells. As well as having been the first ever UK Minister for the Arts and the creator of the Open University, it is less known that Jenny served in the Ministry of Aircraft Production during World War II, keeping aircraft factories running during the Blitz, and she was called to do so because of her no-nonsense attitude and her ability to get things done. That's something that I take inspiration from. I'm proud to follow Jenny as the 595th women, amongst many thousands of men, elected to this Parliament, together with an unprecedented number of women MPs. Our Labour government has important plans to advance women's equality, from halving violence against women and girls to transforming women's experiences of maternity care, a subject about which I met Right Honourable the Baroness Amos just this week. But as well as the women who are recognised for extraordinary achievements, we must be clear that the unseen work that women across the world do every day does not receive the recognition it deserves. According to the UN, women and girls do 16 billion hours of unpaid care work every single day. Their work is the very glue of families, communities and economies. Countries could not function without it. Yet this work remains largely invisible, undervalued and unequally distributed. Today I want to sound a warning. We know that violent struggles are being fought for global power. But around the world, and increasingly at home, the struggle for power is being expressed as a struggle for control over women and our bodies. My honourable friend, the member for Aylesbury, and I have written about this together this week. There are many shocking examples of the battle to control women's bodies. In Iran, as my friend, the member for Erith and Thames Mead mentioned, the oppressive regime has been desperate to prevent women from dressing the way that they want to, despite the incredibly brave protestations of amazing women there in the wake of Mahsa Amini's death. In Afghanistan, as the honourable member for North East Fife spoke about so eloquently, the Taliban have tested the limits of whether the world would stop them from enforcing gender apartheid, forcing women out of schools and workplaces and into the home. They looked for and found the answer that they wanted, that indeed the world does not care enough to stop them. In Sudan, the world's worst humanitarian crisis, rape and sexual violence is routinely used as a weapon of war. At the Munich Security Conference, which I attended recently, our Foreign Secretary, my honourable friend, the member for Pontefract, Castleford and Nottingley, spoke powerfully about her visit to Sudanese refugee camps and the horrific accounts she heard there, including the systematic rape of girls as young as 8. I'm proud to be a former chair of the Circle, the global feminist organisation founded by Annie Lennox. Only this morning they shared data with me which shows that sexual violence in conflicts worldwide has increased by 25% in the last year. Madam Deputy Speaker, in conversations about a shifting global order, there is an increasing subtext of the need to control women's bodies. We see this in some of the attacks on the legitimacy and funding of the United Nations. I've worked with the UN in my previous work, and make no mistake, there are many reforms it would benefit from. However, starving its institutions of funding to do work that no one else will do, for people no one else will help, is a grave error. Work like providing contraception to women in war zones and refugee camps so that they have some basic control over their bodies in situations where they have control over almost nothing else. And in the context of domestic cuts to our own aid budget, which is a source of concern to many of us, we must do everything possible to preserve support for women and girls, and I know that the Foreign Secretary is doing important work on this. But we mustn't content ourselves by believing that this misogyny only exists abroad. Matt Goodwin, the Reform candidate in the Gorton and Denton by-election, said that women who don't have children should be taxed more, and that young women need an education in fertility. Shameful. As if The Handmaid's Tale was something that we should aspire to. He seems to believe that women who choose not to have children or cannot are somehow failing in their duties. Reform have said that, were they in government, the Equality Act, the basis for much of the progress we've made on women's rights in the UK, would be repealed. Shame on them.
Yeah.
Online, British women are stripped of the agency we have over our own bodies, exemplified by Grok weaponising women's bodies through nudification apps, which our Labour government is right to crack down on. My honourable friend, the member for Lowestoft, had the truly awful experience of someone using this technology to make a fake video of her being chloroformed and prepared for rape. This makes the opposition frontbench comments in the previous statement all the more unacceptable. The intended humiliation of women online is not simply cruel or misogynistic, although it is certainly both. It is intended to instill fear and to signal that some violent men believe they are entitled to dominate women. It is to try to normalise this abhorrent behaviour. Last week, ahead of International Women's Day, I met with the Fife Violence Against Women Partnership. We discussed the more than 5,000 incidents of domestic abuse and over 1,100 crimes of indecency reported to the police in Fife last year, and we know that there will be many more unreported. They also shared with me their concerns about social media and the misogyny spread online by so-called male influencers. I heard shocking reports about some of the things that local schoolboys have said to female teachers, comments that they have learned online. These included female teachers being told by boys that they teach, and I quote, "You're so ugly, I wouldn't even rape you." Male influencers online also seek to spread the idea that the role of the trad wife is what girls and young women should aspire to in life. This is the idea that women belong only in the home and that we should all take our fulfilment simply from cooking meals for our husbands and rearing children. This online misogyny is spread by the likes of Andrew Tate and the late Charlie Kirk, and far too many others, and it is aided by harmful algorithms. Perhaps it should not surprise us that a new global survey has found that younger men increasingly believe that a wife should obey her husband and that men are expected to do too much to support equality. This is not an accident. There is transnational organisation to make it happen. The European Parliamentary Forum for Sexual and Reproductive Rights found that $1.18 billion was pumped into European movements dedicated to rolling back women's rights between 2019 and 2023. This funding came from 275 different actors, including church-run NGOs and far-right populist parties. Russia was the biggest source of donations, and the United States the second biggest. It came especially from American Christian nationalists. This American funding is now accompanied by financial help from the US government, which has set aside $200 million to support MAGA-friendly think tanks in Europe. Let us be clear that this is designed to spread their ideology, including here in the UK. So when we, the decent majority, both in this House and outside of this House, confront the grassroots arms of the far right, local groups acting in our communities, let us be clear that they are not just isolated local groupings of people. They are the grassroots arm of a well-organised international effort to reverse women's rights. Madam Deputy Speaker, our government is doing a huge amount to drive forward women's equality on closing the pay gap, on childcare, on tackling violence against women and girls, and so much more. I am proud of that work. But we face a dark threat to the fabric of our society from this organised misogyny that I have described. We must defeat it, and we have much to do.
Lincoln Jopp.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And can I start by paying huge tribute to the member for Gorton and Denton for her maiden speech. She spoke with grace, poise and purpose. And I think that her constituents are very lucky to have them, her representing them here, whether they voted for her or not. Members on these benches will know that I am not overly competitive. I just have to win everything. And so I was rather devastated that the new member made a far, far better maiden speech than my own meagre offering after the general election in 2024. She said she wanted to put Gorton and Denton on the map. And she certainly put it on my radar, because I was wondering, when she was listing the number of distinguished people from her constituency, whether she would get round to mentioning Ethel Sunny Lowry, who was the first British woman. She was born in Gorton, and she was the first British woman to swim the English Channel in 1933. And I know what honourable members are thinking. Surely I have got some neat segue to other women with water-based heroics from my own Spelthorne constituency. And I wouldn't like to disappoint honourable members, because in 1903, at 111 White Hart Lane in Barnes, young Amy Gentry was born to a Cockney father who had worked his way up and become a publisher. And they bought a plot on an island called Hamhor Island. Now, Hamhor Island is the southernmost point of the River Thames, and it is also the southernmost point of my Spelthorne constituency. You could get camping plots there. And she went there from the age of 1, and her dad got a boat, and they used to love messing around in boats. And before she was 10 years old, the people on Hamhor Island used to have these gymkhanas. And she was entered into a dinghy racing contest, which I think she won. And so she clearly got a taste for competition. The war then intervened in her growing up, and obviously honourable members will be only too aware that in 1918 we passed in this place the Representation of People, the People Act. And the tide was turning in terms of votes for women, women's individuality, women expressing themselves. And in 1920, Weybridge Rowing Club decided that they would form a women's section. This was considerably revolutionary at the time. And they formed a women's rowing section. They got a group of young ladies together and trained them in how to row properly, and had the whole women's rowing movement began. In 1925, young Amy Gentry went over to the charity regatta in Belgium, or in the Netherlands, where she competed against France, Belgium and Holland. And in 1927, the sport had developed that much further that they had an 8 competition on the Oxford and Cambridge course between Putney and Mortlake. She wrote at the time that she felt like she was rowing backwards at times. I mean, obviously, literally, she was rowing backwards, but she didn't really feel like she was going anywhere. So dreadful were the conditions. In 1932, her father went to a boat builder and said, "If you build my daughter a boat, will she win?" And the boat builder said, "She will." And indeed she did. And she carried all before her from 1932 to 1934. She became the secretary of the Weybridge Rowing Club, and by 1939 was its chair. And she was the driving force in women's rowing in the country. One of the clubs which had been useful and had adopted this with some enthusiasm was the Vesta Rowing Club, and they set up the first women's regatta. And a gentleman from the Vesta Rowing Club said at the time, "While I do not approve of rowing for women, as they will do it anyway, the best thing I can do would be to help them do it properly." So you can see the sort of attitudes that were at the time. Nevertheless, she was fantastic at it, and she retired from the highest level of the sport in the late 30s. Obviously, the Second World War came around, and in 1939 she became the secretary to Barnes-Wallis. And for those members who are not familiar with the Dam Busters, I have to remind honourable members that Barnes-Wallis was instrumental in developing the bouncing bomb. And the way in which he did it was that he and his secretary, Amy Gentry, would go to Silvermere Lake and he would fire various projectiles from a catapult across the lake, and then he and Amy would row out to collect them in order to see how they fared, sort of a very high-grade stone-skimming competition. And at one stage, Barnes-Wallis was a pretty serious guy, and Amy had to point out to him as they were rowing out to one of the projectiles, she said, "Wallis, you may be in charge, but I am in charge in this boat. Sit down." So after the war, rowing went from strength to strength. We were represented the European Championships in 1952 and in 1954, carrying all before us at the national and international level. As a slight aside, in the 1954 European Games, which Amy Gentry went over to, she handed out some prizes to one of the crews, to a young lady called Betty Shugbrook. And Betty Shugbrook was a member of the London Rowing Club, and she had met her soon-to-be husband at the London Rowing Club on regatta on Boxing Day. His name was Graham Hill. She went on to be Betty Hill, and she became the only person to be married to and be the mother of a Formula One world racing champion. So Amy was awarded the... she was instrumental in bringing the Euros here, the European Championships here in 1960, and she was awarded the OBE in 1969. She died in June 1976 in Stanwell in my constituency. And the significance of that date is a sad irony, because she didn't quite live to see the moment 1 month later when women were allowed to compete in rowing in the Olympic Games in Montreal. And so if, when honourable members in a month's time, if they happen to be watching the Oxford and Cambridge boat race, when the women's crew goes under Barnes Bridge in the latter stages of the race, they will pass a huge pub on the south bank of the River Thames, and it is called the White Hart. And that is at the end of White Hart Lane, where Amy Gentry was born. And so when honourable members see that moment, perhaps they would join me in raising a glass to the remarkable woman, Amy Gentry.
Don't bother.
Thank Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And I'd like to thank the government for having this debate in government time. I had put in for a backbench business debate, as I normally do as backup. I think that now that we have a Labour government, I could probably stop doing that now. Madam Deputy Speaker, I need to apologise for my voice. I was going to blame it on a cold, but actually I was at the Transmission concert yesterday at Wembley Arena, and I was shouting that trans rights are the human rights quite loudly. And also singing along to Beverly Knights, everything's going to be all right. And it reminded me of a saying that everything will be all right in the end, and if it's not all right, it's not the end. And Madam Deputy Speaker, right now, things are not all right for women. As the Minister stated in her excellent opening speech, women are currently at our most vulnerable globally. It feels worse than it has felt in a very long time. With the influencers and the brain rot of social media and the increasing lack of legislation around bodily autonomy and men influencing boys, as we've heard many times from MPs today, on what a perfect woman should be, with detailed instructions of how to abuse women and girls, we are in serious danger as women and we need protection. So today is the day, on International Women's Day, Madam Deputy Speaker, to tell some truths. Because for many of us, progress has not been made by us being welcomed in the room. Progress has been made by us taking up room. Progress has been made by us taking up space. And I want to thank all the women in my constituency in Brent who have taken up space. Even when, as women, we're told, you don't belong here. Or we're told they're letting anyone in nowadays, which was said to me by an MP once on the terrace. And that is not the only thing that's been said to me as an MP. I've been told, Madam Deputy Speaker, that I'm too serious. And then I've also been told that I'm not serious enough. I've been told I need to dress up, then been told I need to dress down. I should smile more, or I smile too much. I'm too confident, or I'm not confident enough. I talk about black issues too much, and then I don't talk about black issues enough. Or I talk about women's issues all the time, but I don't talk about men's issues. And the reality is, Madam Deputy Speaker, I've been here for all of the International Men's Day debate when there's been nobody on the backbenches from the other side. So nobody can accuse me of not being an equal opportunity debater. Yeah. But the truth is this, that you can't win, and you will never win if you're trying to